Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. Tonight we'll be looking at the disappearance of 5-year-old Summer Wells. At least she's 5 at the time we're making this video. So let's get started with the introductions. We'll start with you, Jeff. How you doing?
Very good, yeah. Thankful to be here tonight. My name is Jeff Pincin, and I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Delaware and in Pennsylvania. I specialize in the treatment of OCD and other obsessive-compulsive disorders. And if I wasn't a counselor, my dream job really would have been a drywall finisher, right? So some people call it mudding, some people call it spackling, whatever. But that's really where I wanted to be, right? It turns out there's a lot of dust involved. And I coughed a little bit when I tried it. I'm like, I don't think this is for me. So counseling was kind of my fine if I have to, right?
At least it's dust-free.
Dust-free, right. Yeah. Usually, I guess there's instances maybe where it's not, but generally speaking, there's no dust involved. So this sounds like it's an okay career if I have to.
Yeah, but still, you could have been a drywall finisher.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Could have been ideal.
Terrible. You had to become a counselor instead. Now, for me, mudding had a different connotation entirely. There's like off-roading stuff, like I'm behind, lots of mud fun.
Maybe still dust involved?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. My name is Mike Smith, also a licensed professional counselor of mental health in the state of Delaware, focusing in narrative therapy and geek therapy. Self-styled expert in all things geek. If I hadn't become a counselor, I think I would have wanted to have become a mobile signal extender installer, just the person who just brings signal out into the world beyond where you can't reach it. I had an opportunity to do that, but it was in the early 2000s, like 2001, 2002, and there really wasn't a lot of technology able to do that. Like I was ahead of my time in that. I was like, we could just boost the signal out there, and they're just like, this isn't sci-fi, kid. Get out of here. Okay,
You could have been the pioneer.
I was trying to be a pioneer, but it just didn't work out for me. And
Missed your window.
I did. Like I was ahead of my time. The problem is, as George Carlin said, the problem is I'm only an hour and a half ahead.
Very good. So we had a recommendation in the comments that, Jeff, you mentioned before, to do a quick summary of the case before we get into it, which is a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a long podcast. We go through a lot. So it's nice to start out with the spoilers. So spoiler alert for the case that we're covering. But why don't you give us kind of an overview, Jeff, of what's going on here with Summer Wells?
Sure. Yeah. So Summer Wells, middle name Moon, Summer Moon Wells.
Isn't it Summer Moon Utah Wells?
It might be.
That's what I read.
I don't know. Well, okay. So that's a good point, Mike. There's so much information out there. There's so much speculation. We honestly don't have a lot of information about this. We know that Summer is missing. We know who she lives with, and people that saw her last, people that were with her that day. But we really don't know much else, right? So that's a good point, is that there's tons and tons of information out there in general, but especially with this case, right? People speculating, people saying, I heard this, or I saw this, or somebody told me this, and there's a ton of family members that are associated with this family. So there's a lot of them who are giving information, interviews, and things like that. But what we do know is Summer was 5 years old at the time we're making this video. And this was June 15th. Family, the mom, grandmother, and a family friend named Hunter. They go swimming at a local watering hole. I think we have it up here. Horse Pond Swimming Hole. Right. Got it. Horse Pond.
Technical difficulties.
Pond Swimming
Horse
Hole.
Pond Swimming Hole.
Right.
That was his name.
So they go there. They're swimming. They run some errands that day, and drop Hunter off. And this is according to the mom. They drop Hunter off, and they go back home. And so this is early evening, late afternoon. Go back home. Summer's inside with her 3 brothers, and mom and grandmother are outside. Grandmother lives on the property with them. So grandmother says she wants to transplant some flowers. Mom says, all right, I'm going to get Summer. She'll be more than willing to help. Summer jumps right up and comes out and helps. So at some point, Summer says, I want to go inside. I want to play with my brothers. I just want to play. I want to be inside. So she goes inside. Mom walks her over to the house, goes inside, watches her go inside. says to the boys, says to her brothers, to Summer's brothers, hey, watch Summer. She's going to be in here with you. Mom says she goes back, helps the Summer's grandmother with something. And she says she's gone for about sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes 5 minutes, somewhere between that. A short amount of time is what she says. And then she goes back to the house and asks the boys where Summer is. And they say she went downstairs to play with her toys. Mom yells downstairs and doesn't hear anything. And what she says is unlike Summer. Usually Summer will answer immediately. But she doesn't hear anything, yells down again, doesn't hear anything, goes down there. Summer's nowhere to be found. And so that was the last time anybody saw her. All right, so that was June 15th of this year, 2021. And they call the police right around 5:30. They call the police at about 6:30. They notice that she's not there. I think it was about 5:30 that evening. That was the last time they saw her. The father, Don, reports that he was at work during this time when they couldn't find her, and rushes home and gets there before the police. I understand that. So one thing you need to understand, that we all need to understand, is this is a very rural area. Okay, so if you look at it on the map, this is Rogersville, Tennessee. It is right in between the mountains. Okay, so mountain ranges are running right next to their town. So these are the Smoky Mountains, at least on one side. I'm not sure if the other range has a specific name, but they're right in the middle of it. So very much a valley, very kind of difficult to get to. You have to drive around the mountains to get to this Rogersville. So secluded. I imagine maybe that the police are maybe a little bit understaffed in that area. Maybe there's not a whole lot going on. I'm not really sure. But they took a long time to get there. We know that for sure. The father said that he was about 40 minutes away, 45 minutes away, got there before the police. And that's really all we know. We don't know who did it. The police have not released any details about any clues they may have to where Summer might be, who might have her, what happened to her, or really any leads that I'm aware of. So a lot of what we're going to be doing is talking about the information that we do have, and information that people have presented, which again, this is not from the police for the most part. So it'll be a lot of speculating, I guess, and trying to understand what makes sense and what doesn't, given the circumstances.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Good.
Well, you said that who has her. That the big thing about that is the only people who have actually officially said anything about Summer being abducted have been her parents.
Right.
Her mother and father have said, we know she was abducted, but they don't have any evidence of that. Mm-hmm. And the police have not said that overtly, have not come out right and said, we know that she was abducted. The police, the local sheriff has not said that at all. But he did say, we have suspects. Wait a minute. He's saying that we don't know that this is an abduction at all, but we have some suspects.
Yeah.
That's a little bit odd to me. Why do you have suspects if this isn't an abduction?
Right.
But again, there's no evidence of an abduction.
Except the fact that she's missing, and it probably wasn't under her own power. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could have been. She was 5. She could have walked away, but it does seem like somebody else must have been involved at some level, just based on the statistics.
Sure.
We'll talk about the different theories, though. But yeah, this is an unusual case. I think, to speak to your point earlier, Jeff, with the speculation, what happens in a case like this has generated a lot of interest. I think one of the reasons is because it's similar to Madeleine McCann. And, it's just a mystery. Like, she's there at one moment, and then she's gone. Like, what happened? There's very little information in the McCann case, although now, it might be closer to solved. But when it first happened, some have called it the greatest missing person mystery ever. This has some parallels to it. But with the McCann case, over time, they built up interviews with people, video, things like that. It doesn't really necessarily help a lot figure it out, but a lot of information. With this case, that hasn't happened. It's these interviews with Don and Candus mostly that we see. That's our information. Like the whole thing about the brothers being taken by the CPS or whatever, that's from them. We don't know that officially. I mean, we think they were, because why would they lie about that? I mean, they would get caught pretty quick lying about that, but we don't know. Mm-hmm. So I think what happens is that this case has the emerging popularity of a Madeleine McCann, but no data. Yeah. So speculation fills in right? I mean, we saw the same thing out with Chris Watts. At first, there wasn't a whole lot about that. There still really isn't, comparatively for how popular it is.
Sure.
And there's people all over social media speculating about the smallest details they saw in a picture of Chris Watts or a report, like a friend of his uncle once said he was a smoker. Now, I don't know if he was or not. I'm just making that up. But we see the same thing here with
That's going to come up. Somebody's going to...
he wasn't
Dr. Grande said Chris Watts was a smoker.
I know he wasn't a smoker. His grandfather's niece coworker told me. So yeah, you have people, studying these interviews with Candus Bly and Don Wells, and they're like, a button's missing from her blouse. She did it, or she didn't do it because of that. Like, maybe the kid has the button. Like, it's just they're just taking nothing or virtually nothing and expanding this whole string of speculation. And I think a big part of the problem, and we'll talk about this, is I think this is a culture shock. A lot of these missing persons cases occur in relatively populated areas. Mm-hmm. Rogersville, Tennessee is not that.
No, it is quite the opposite of that.
Right.
Yeah. This is a place where people don't get to socialize a lot with a wide range of people. Mm-hmm. It's restricted educational levels traditionally as well. Like, there's not a lot of people going to college and coming back. So not a lot of worldliness, right, I guess, is a way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think they're being judged through a very kind of metropolitan lens, but compared to their cohort, I'm not sure they're really unusual.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there is. That's the thing that struck me about this particular case is it doesn't, like, the unusual part of it is it's just the disappearance. Nothing else is really all that unusual about this case. It's a missing person, but the people involved aren't all that strange.
Yeah.
We've seen other cases with people who are far, far stranger than anybody in this case. But yeah, educationally, they're probably not quite as worldly as some other populations. But the interesting thing about those rural areas is while they don't have as diverse a population as in the middle of a city, as a major metropolitan area, in general, everybody within a certain radius.
Right.
Like, you go into town and you know everybody, because town is only like 300 people.
Right. And therefore, all the potential suspects.
Yeah.
And what they drive, too.
Right, which is what makes this kind of thing so much more difficult to understand. Is like, I know all of the people who might have done something like this. I can't think of anybody in the 300 people who would have done with it, but it has to have been an abduction.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's slow the timeline down. We have a compressed version from Jeff. Let's kind of take this apart and set the scene in Rogersville, Tennessee, kind of going back to June 15, starting with this house. We've seen pictures of this house, right? It looks like it was an older house. It's built on a hill.
Kind of built into the hill.
Yeah. And I've seen this before. These are fairly popular in not so much in Delaware because it's kind of a flat state, but in Pennsylvania, being built on a hill is kind of like the norm.
Right. I mean, Delaware, our highest point in Delaware is Mount Ebright, which is a very flat road with a speed bump at the top. That's why it's the highest point.
The flag at the top of the speed bump. I made it.
And the guy who drives the biggest truck, he's the one who's now the highest in Delaware.
Right. I mean, at the top, you could set a marble on the road and it'll just stay there. Right? This is not a hilly state, really.
I remember the first time I went to Iron Hill, I couldn't believe how high it was.
Wow, there's a hill.
This is like incredible. But Pennsylvania, I mean, hills there are massive. Yeah. Like the Poconos, like those are real mountains.
Yeah.
So, you don't really have a lot of real estate choices necessarily. So you build the house on the hill, and you're going to have, usually the way they do it is you'll walk right into the first floor, and then the basement will get exposed as you go down the hill, and you'll have like an exit that's right out of the basement door.
Mm-hmm. Walkout, yeah.
A walkout basement, yeah. Which is a novelty here, really is. Like, you pay extra for that here.
Right.
It's like a walkout basement. Like, well, you're on a hill. But Delaware has hills?
They built the hill for the house.
It's like this big mound they put in.
No, what's actually interesting about that, my house was actually technically built on a hill way back almost 40 years ago. But the developer was like, we don't like the hill in the backyard, so they filled it in. The problem is they didn't fill it in right. So now the backyard floods every time it rains.
Yeah.
Because they just pushed dirt in. They didn't do anything to like pack it down or anything. So it just floods massively. We have a lake in our backyard.
Especially after
Ida came
Ida
through.
came through,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's terrible. My dog has to wear, floaties to go out there, doggy paddle.
No animals were hurt in the production of this.
And that's true. No animals were hurt. He hates going out in the rain anyway. So
Yeah, so you have this situation where when a Delawarean or any person from a flatland hears about a basement abduction, they think, whoa, wait a second. Somebody came from the first floor and went down to the basement, grabbed her, and then ascended the stairs. Impossible. But no, in Tennessee, you can walk right out of the...
in general,
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case with their house, though. This particular house. A lot of the images I saw had windows, but no exit door.
I thought there was a door in the
there
back of
is
it.
in the basement.
Is there?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't seeing one when I was looking at the pictures.
Yeah, it's I think there's an overhang, or they built a roof, just a temporary kind of well, maybe not temporary for them, but it's just this metal roof, and you can see the basement on the below grade in the basement. And Don said that he built that addition. I don't know how that relates to the basement, but Don said that he had help with somebody, but he built something onto that house. And you can see there's they have a lot of dogs on this property. Mm-hmm. They say they keep coming from out of nowhere, but they have a lot of dogs on this property. And they built something in between both parts of the house where the dogs can go underneath of it.
Okay, I'm saying there is.
And so
on that side, I'm at the picture that I have. I'm seeing it from, but I had seen from other angles on the side of the house. One of the videos I watched from Court TV was like, we're going to go over the house really extensively. We're going to show like there's this one door over here, and there's no other doors on the house. There's one on the front side. I'm like, okay, so I'm like, all right, and they didn't show this side, and I'm like, okay.
Well, the tough thing
there's a
thing
door
about it is that there's so much debris on this property as well. There's vehicles that are not operational. There's a bus on the property that I understand the grandmother had meant to turn into some kind of a RV or something like that. Yeah. So it's rather difficult to understand the layout because of all that.
I think it's also worth noting, again, people are from all different places. They might not be familiar with kind of rural life, although there are a lot of people in rural America, in different places. But it's not unusual to have campers, trailers, old buses, old cars. Camper. Yeah, I think somebody lives in the
grandmother.
The grandmother lives in the camper, and they've got a bus somewhere else, and they've got bunches of cars.
Yeah,
yeah. I think you don't have homeowners associations out there, right?
I wish we didn't have them here.
Right? Yeah, sometimes. So you're going to have all kinds of kind of half-built old stuff laying around. Old tires are repurposed into like planters, old tractor tires. Right. Truck tires, sometimes just regular car tires. They built swings out of them, which have been featured in a lot of movies. The
tire swings are great. Mm-hmm.
Unless it rains shortly before that, in which case you got water sitting in it and you may not realize
That's why you take a drill and a few holes in the bottom, then it drains that.
Ideally. But I mean, how many times does that happen, right? Just saying. It's been unfortunate the number of times I've experienced it where there have been no holes. I get it. I'm with you, Mike. I'm with you. But it just doesn't always happen.
You just put some drain holes in.
I'm with you. I promise.
I'm saying, if you've got enough of these tires rolling around, you're going to put some drain holes in. You either have a drill, which is one of the best tools to have in any household, or you have something like a pickaxe, which you just holes.
Yes, you see a lot of innovation.
Good way to put it.
Right, with these properties. So, some people have commented and like this, these people are, what are they doing with all this junk on the property? Clearly they must have done it. I imagine all their neighbors' properties look exactly the same.
The other thing to remember with a rural property like that, like here in Delaware, in suburban Delaware, because Delaware is just suburbs, that's pretty much it. Even lower Delaware, in comparison to some of the rural areas here that we're talking about here, what we call lower, slower Delaware is still suburban in comparison. This is so
It's the
rural.
big city compared to what we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in order to get your trash they don't have trash trucks that come out to their property. To get your trash to the dump, like you have to load it up in the truck and take it, which means not everything's going to go to the dump. And you could look around and say, if I can repurpose this, I'm going to keep it, put it in a pile over here. And it gets kept. And it's at that point, it's not junk. It's potentially used in the future.
Yeah, the landfills are visited by the population regularly. Different than here. Like,
Right.
We don't go to the landfill. Typically, somebody would come and pick up the trash. Other things I've seen I find interesting. Again, I think just lack of knowledge of the area. People have said maybe she climbed in the sewer, ended up like another house. There's no sewer
unlikely.
service in this town. I would be shocked if any home in Rogersville, Tennessee, had anything but a septic system.
Yeah.
Or nothing.
Right.
Right, like the ancient technology.
Like a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Which, that I'm familiar with outhouses and things. My grandfather's cabin had them, which was really a rural area.
Yeah, so there is no network of sewers that she could have crawled in.
No, that's more of a city thing.
Yeah.
Especially out in the mountains like that. Not going to happen.
No.
It's more likely that if she fell into something, it would have been a natural cave or hole, a well that exists on the property that may not be known about. But I think that's one of the reasons why Candus and Don are so adamant that had to have been abduction, because they're like, we know our property.
And they
know every
probably
inch
do.
of it. And they probably do. They probably do know quite a bit about their property. But to me, a 5-year-old child doesn't know the property. And if she's distracted while she's running around playing, she could easily get turned around and lost.
Yeah, well, it's this property is also on a hill, right? And people have talked about, well, maybe somebody drove by and just reached out and grabbed her. Again, knowledge of the rural area. There's no driving by this house. This is a destination that's intentional.
Yeah.
The road that the driveway connects to is not a road that anybody would be on.
Right.
Much less the driveway. It's not like here you can just, people all the time drive right in front of the house. So if somebody's out there, they could get taken or whatever. This is not how it works in this community. If it was a person in a motor vehicle, they knew where the place was and they drove there intentionally.
And you can barely see the house from the road, if at all. So it'd be tough to drive past there. You really have to be looking, because this is June, so trees would be in full bloom. There'd be a lot of leaves, a lot of coverage with the trees. So you can barely see it. You're not really sure what's up there necessarily if you're just driving by unaware of what's going on. So you'd really have to know something about it, like you said, because it's not just going to be an accident that you arrived at this house, knew how to get to somebody.
Right. As Jeff Foxworthy would have pointed out, you have to turn off the paved road. Directions to the house are turn off the paved road.
Right. Yeah, this is definitely one of those houses.
Yeah.
Right, where the neighbors aren't driving by and honking and waving.
Right.
That's just not how it works. Now, there are also a lot of dogs on the property, which you mentioned, Jeff. Some people said maybe the dogs would have warned, or likely they would have warned of an intruder. And I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then I wonder, again, if everyone knows everybody, a lot of people have been to the property, maybe they would not bark if they knew who it was.
There's also the ignoring the barks.
They probably bark a lot.
If there's a lot of dogs, they probably do bark a lot. I know my dog barks at everything, and I tell him to shut up, and I just ignore what he's barking at, because it's usually somebody just walking in front of the house. He's a great alert dog. Terrible guard dog.
One picture I saw with police and investigators around, there was something like 5 or 6 dogs in this one picture, and they were all laying down. This wasn't a video, so I don't know if dogs were barking or not, but they were all laying down. And I don't know how long the police had been there either, so maybe the dogs had gotten used to them or something, but there was a lot of dogs, and just in this one picture. So if it's one picture, 5 or 6 dogs, I can only imagine how many others there were around, ones that weren't right out in the open. But that's a good point, though. Even if someone was in the house prior to Summer going in there, just waiting for her or somebody to walk down there and harm them or whatever, even on the way out, perhaps one of the dogs would have indicated that or something. You know, I guess there's no real clear answer on that one.
Yeah, maybe the person, if it's a person who did it, maybe they took some of the dogs with them.
There you go.
Yeah, well,
Dog whisperer.
If you got that many dogs, do you really know all the dogs that are missing?
they wouldn't. Yeah.
I would think you would, but because honestly, no matter how many dogs I had, I'd be like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hey, there's a couple missing. Oh well.
Yeah, right.
But it might be something I would bring up to the cop. Yeah, like 3 of our dogs are missing too. Like the 5-year-old kid and 3 other dogs. But no dogs were missing in the making of this episode.
Right. No dogs harmed, no dogs missing. So we see here...
that
again,
we're aware of.
Right.
We're aware of at this time.
No one's talked about it. So again, we're on June 15, and Don's at work, and Candus is at home. There was this situation, just to clarify this, Candus's mother is also named Candus. So maybe we'll just call her the grandmother or something to clarify. But Candus, her grandmother, I guess, had some type of surgery or some type of appointment, a physician, and had to wait for medication. So they went to what's been referred to as a watering hole to swim. Right. So they're also with a 15-year-old?
Hunter.
Yeah. And
Family friend.
here we already see varying stories. So I'm to understand that Hunter said something about Summer being in distress while swimming, which has made people think like dry drowning or something like that. And Candus, not the grandmother, but Candus Bly, has said that there was nobody in trouble. So we already see 2 different stories, even before we get to the missing person, which just seems unusual. Like, why would anybody lie? Somebody's lying or misremembers pretty badly.
Yeah. There's interviews out there with Hunter and with Candus, the mother, Candus. And they do present some different things.
Mm-hmm.
Many different details. Ones, maybe they're inconsequential, but nonetheless, they're very different. So one example is they went to a grocery store, and Candus says that she was in there for about 5 minutes. Okay, she got milk and cheese, according to her. Hunter says she was in there for about an hour, and Hunter and Summer were in the car together watching TikTok videos or videos, doing something on the phone. TikTok comes up a lot with these people. Candus apparently is very active on TikTok. So Hunter says an hour, Candus says 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes, or something along that, a short amount of time. But then when they get home, Candus says that she asked her sons to come out and help with the groceries. Now I'm thinking, all right, now gallons of milk are heavy. She did say there was gallons of milk in the car. I don't know how many, but so okay, that's heavy. So I can understand that. But being in there for 5 minutes, that's a pretty short amount of time. That doesn't give you a whole lot of time to get a lot of stuff, asking 3 boys to come out and help. So who knows who's correct on this? It was also a Tennessee day. It was also a day in June in Tennessee, which I understand was fairly hot. So if these kids are sitting in the car for about an hour, and hopefully the windows are down, I assume they are, but even if the windows are down, that can still get really hot in this car, right? Just the sun beating down on it potentially. So there's discrepancies. Do they mean anything? Maybe not, but it still puts in perspective who's right, who's wrong, who's telling the truth, who's not. So is it inconsequential? I don't know, but it's pretty glaring.
Jeff, I think you're underestimating the sheer amount of cheese one can get in 5 minutes.
You've got a good point.
I'm just saying.
Do you think they're cheese connoisseurs? Maybe
a lot of
getting
cheese
all of it?
into a car. You can just walk along, all the cheese into the.
I will take all of this.
But it does strike as a little bit odd to think, well, I just went in and got milk and cheese. And then when we got home, I asked the boys to come out and help with the groceries. Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lot of cheese and a lot of milk if you had to get the boys to come help with them.
Right.
Difference between, but I know that time can be, the perception of time can be, wonky at times. And I know I have terrible ADHD, and there are times that I sit down, I swear, I'm going to play a video game for 5 minutes. It's been 3 hours. What? Really? Seriously? No way it's been 3 hours. Oh, crap. It has been.
Candus would say that pretty often, that she, in everything I watched, she said it probably 4 different times, that she says, I'm not good with time. I've never been good with time. which is an interesting thing to say. But I guess when you're recounting details like this, it's obviously pretty important. So I think that brings us to another point here that can't be overlooked. There's a socioeconomic level that's involved here, right? It's a rural area, so I think that's generally going to be lower. But just judging by the appearance of the house, people involved, things like that. Don was a drywall finisher, which of course I wish I could have been.
So lucky. You got your job.
He was living the
Got
dream.
my jacket, right? Living the dream. So I don't know if he made a lot of money, but the average income for Rogersville is something like $25,000 a year, which much lower than the national average. So socioeconomic level. I think there's also a point to be made for the intelligence level involved. And I'm not saying anything like they're stupid or anything like that, but it's just the area they live in, the life they kind of live. So I think that's a factor as well. So maybe that has to do with time. Maybe it has to do with recounting details, details like that.
Yeah, maybe a slower pace of life too, I think contributes to, we have to worry about every minute. They do not.
They call it Tennessee time. I've heard.
I would think to a point. It's not really necessarily intelligence level of that area, but more the education level. As Dr. Grande pointed out, people who go off to college tend to not come back to those areas. When
not a lot of opportunity.
There's not a lot of opportunities. There are some who might. There absolutely people who go off to medical school and then return to the rural area because what they wanted to do was become the small town doctor.
Yeah.
Absolutely are people, and that's a wonderful thing for people who want to do that. But generally, if you leave and go off to college to become an electrical engineer, middle of nowhere, Tennessee or middle of nowhere Texas is probably not where you're going to find great opportunities to utilize that skill set. Mm-hmm. So it becomes once people get out, they're out.
Yeah.
And people who stay don't have the opportunities to get the education.
Mm-hmm. And therefore don't necessarily leave.
Right.
Yeah, I think the environment selects for what I said before in another video. A population that's doesn't always appear sophisticated, especially on something like a media interview where we expect a lot of polish now, right? Like times have changed where it used to be like politicians didn't have to worry about how they looked on camera. Now I think we judge them largely by how they look on camera. Candus and Don had no way of preparing for this.
To quote Back to the Future, no wonder your president's an actor. He's got to look good on camera.
Ronald Reagan being the president in 1985.
Yes.
You mean the actor? No.
I like how he skipped governor. Of course, the time. He wasn't governor, so they did that correct. He was an actor at that time. Yeah. That was so well done. We have a whole episode about
We do. The movie part, Back to the Future.
Yeah, so now looking at the arrival at the house. So this is also kind of unusual. People have pointed out a few discrepancies here. They were planting flowers, yet only, a few hours before, presumably getting medication or treatment for a bad knee. Again, this is the grandmother. Had some type of problem with a knee. Seems like an unusual choice of activity if your knee's injured.
It might be, but that might be why she had her daughter and granddaughter helping.
She could have been watching.
She could have been sitting in a chair watching. No, I want that one over there. I want this one over here. Or even sitting down with her knee stretched out
true.
and working in the dirt. There's any number of reasons. I don't find that to be particularly out. Besides, if she got the medicine for the knee and her knee was feeling better. My mother used to have to get cortisone shots in her knee. And for a few hours after she got the shot, it was painful because the shot had gone in, but then after that, her knees felt so much better.
Yeah,
for a while.
Right. Yeah. So unfortunately, it doesn't last too long for a lot of people. But
I think that they were potted plants, so they could have been on a table even, or she may be sitting down and not have to be kneeling.
I think this could also be cultural. One thing I've noticed about many people who live in rural areas, especially if they're involved in agriculture, not that these guys were, but they're like sturdy people. Right? No other way to put it. Like they're tough. They can't rely on a lot of help. They, for certain things, they fix their own machines. They fix their own houses. If they're hurt, they go to work. So it could just be, I'm just going to do it. Yeah. It's going to hurt one way or the other. So these plants aren't going to plant themselves. Yeah. So we see here that whatever they're doing to plants, Summer goes in the basement, and just now, there's different stories, as you said, Jeff, about how much time lapsed, and this is kind of an important amount of time. If you only knew one time period, you would want to know that. Yeah. Was it 2 hours? Was it 2 minutes? Most estimates here put it at a few minutes.
That's about as precise as they can get. A few minutes. But yeah, 2 minutes, 5 minutes is what Candus has said. It's anywhere between 2 minutes and 5 minutes. But let's be honest, like it could have been an hour. If Candus isn't great with time, and she wasn't really clear about what she was doing during that time, she went over to talk to her mother at the trailer.
She said she was helping her with the knee, with brace or whatever it was. Yeah,
which could have been, but it could have taken a little bit longer. You're sitting there chit chatting. Can be, you don't pay attention to the time, but it doesn't seem like a long period of time. You go back over, and from what I understand, the Summers brothers. The three of them were they were on the internet watching TikTok videos or watching TV or something. Like they were all engrossed in something, and they said, watch your sister. Okay, we'll watch her.
You can picture them. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll watch her, and she goes downstairs.
In one ear and out the other.
In 15, if 15 minutes could have gone by in that time period, and nobody would have any idea. She could have walked out and been.
15 minutes is significantly different than 2 or even 5 for that matter.
Yeah, and maybe the temptation, if she's not being completely honest, would be to shorten that time. Like I would expect somebody in that position to kind of lean in favor of not looking guilty.
Right. There's a minimization. Right?
Yeah.
Like I want to minimize my culpability or responsibility in this by saying it's only 2 minutes. It was like 15, but it was only 2 minutes.
Yeah, she had already kind of gotten that stigma on her that she wasn't potentially paying attention to Summer when Summer was swimming, because maybe there was an issue with her struggling in the water, and Mom didn't go in there, but Hunter did. And so that already paints a picture of, oh, wait a minute, was this Mom being neglectful in this moment? Was she not paying as much attention? So that would make sense. Maybe she's trying to kind of regain some ground on that.
Yeah, only out of sight for a few minutes, I think is where that's her official story, as was said. Mm-hmm. Now, the first thing she does when Summer's missing is that we know of that's significant is calling Don at work. Some people said she should have called 911. I don't know. It seems normal to want to communicate because maybe he would know something like, oh, the neighbor was supposed to pick her up for whatever. Something, like who knows? Or
maybe he knew, oh yeah, she's been really interested in this thing down by this log down in the holler, go check there. Mm-hmm. Like, he might have known something that with her that Candus didn't know. Plus, Don is he's the person, mm-hmm. right? Like he's the I don't know whether he's head of household but he's kind of her person, her point of contact for everything. Like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. I'm freaking out. I need you to ground me. What do I do?
Right. Yeah, it seems okay. Now, here's the story. Now, we don't know this. This is important. We don't know it. But the story is that they both called 911. And I'm pretty sure we know at least Candus did. But reports say they both did. But we can't find anything like that. There's no transcript. There's no recording.
And again, this is one of those places where this interesting, lack of, but tons of information, mm-hmm. because a couple of the reports that I read were that her other brothers were the ones who called the police. Like that it wasn't Candus who made the phone call, but one of her brothers made the phone call. Because her mom, because Candus was out looking for Summer on the property.
But that even in a rural area, those calls are recorded. 100%. The police are withholding this. And it's perplexing why they would do that. Yeah. It makes no sense in a missing person case unless there's something really special on there, and I don't think there is, but who knows? I mean, I would, they could bleep it out.
Sure.
Redact it. I mean, you could also, take the voice component out and just do a transcript with redaction and send it out. This particular police department seems very unhappy about the outsiders studying this case. Much more so, much more defensive than really almost any missing person case I can think of. Usually the police are like, please, we want to find them.
Right.
they're like, we're competent. I'm paraphrasing, we're competent. Don't judge us. That's
we can do this. We don't need the FBI's help. Well, technically, the law says you have to have the FBI's help because it's their purview at this point. Like any kidnapping or potential kidnapping case goes to the FBI. Missing children, especially, always go to the FBI. As soon as it's logged, it goes to the FBI.
Which goes all the way back to the Lindbergh case, when they inserted themselves and then had to justify. That's so now kidnappings FBI can handle, and should.
Yeah, they should, because there's always a potential in any kidnapping. There's always a potential for crossing state lines. And if you cross state lines, you have jurisdictional issues. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation should be in there to get rid of any of that.
Yeah, I mean, really, missing persons are hard. FBI does a pretty good job at missing persons, considering how difficult they are to solve. Actually, we look at a sample, or by a sample. Most missing persons are solved. We just don't hear about them.
Right.
And within 48 hours, they come back or found. So we only hear the times when the police are stumped.
The extraordinary times.
Yeah. So this is around 6:30. So whatever happened, however many calls, this happened at 6:30. And we do know there was a release of information with the dispatcher talking to the police. So we have that, strangely. Like that was released, for whatever reason, but not the actual call. And from that, we know that Candus said she had been out for a walk, came home, and was unable to find Summer. But Candus said she doesn't walk around the property because a bear or a wolf could get her. Is it a big deal? Strange.
But it's different.
Was she out for a walk or wasn't she? It seems like a pretty straightforward thing. But again, that's the dispatcher. So the dispatcher might have heard it wrong from Don and then transmitted it wrong. Because that's just the communication with the police that were responding.
The reason we have that dispatch call is actually from a recorded emergency scanner. It wasn't actually released by the police. It was a third party who was listening in.
They're giving nothing out. Yeah.
They were listening in on the police scanner and recorded what was going on. And that's what the dispatcher says, that Summer said she was going for a walk. But Candus, Candus has denied that. She denied going for a walk.
Yeah. It seems like bears, Tennessee, they're bears for certain. But people who live in rural areas are typically pretty comfortable with the wildlife. Not everybody.
Tend to be.
And you never know. Any kind of bear can hurt you. So they're always a risk.
There's snakes out there, too. I understand there's pretty bad snakes out there, too. I don't know if that area specifically has them, but I know Tennessee does. So she said she was worried about that as well. So that could be a pretty significant thing. You can't really see snakes as easily as you can a bear.
Yeah, so now we see the Tennessee State Bureau of Investigation publishes an endangered child alert about midnight. We're now on June 16. It elevates to an amber alert, which is that's when you know things are getting serious. They said that there was imminent danger. All right, so seems to rule out like a relative picking her up or something like that. So now they know that something bad happened. Then we see these searches. And here again, I think it's important to recognize there's a lot of land. This isn't like searching my backyard,
right?
Which would take you all like 30 seconds.
Right.
Until you get out into one of these areas and look around and have and are told, look, you need to search this whole area, it's hard to understand how big we're talking about, how big this area is.
Like my backyard, you might need a canoe to search, but it's still only going to take you a couple of minutes. Okay, we're done. But to your point, the huge areas, like the police took a long time to get there because out in the middle of nowhere, like it is so far away from anything. Like Don was 45 minutes away from home, and that was probably a close job,
or at least typical.
At least typical. Yeah. So they're out in the middle of nowhere,
and treacherous too. So we talked about mountains. I know there's a stream, well, in the river that was close to them, the watering hole, I think, was part of a river or something, or at least a pond. It's something, a large body of water. So mountains, we talked about the animals, snakes, coyotes, bears, whatever else might be out there, right? And so you got to walk through this stuff, and there's a lot of trees. Of course, trees fall, and so there's branches you got to walk around. There's trees you got to walk around, all of that kind of stuff. And you also have to worry about things you can't see, right? So not only animals you can't see, like snakes, but also maybe there's a dip in the ground, right? For whatever reason, maybe a tree had fallen, and there's where the roots used to be. Anything, the sky's the limit. And especially if it's getting dark, when it starts to get dark, the forest, a wooded area, is going to be the worst of it, right? Because the trees already block out a lot of the light, depending on how dense it is. So there's a lot of factors there, and they covered by now they've covered hundreds of acres. I think one thing I said 700 or 900 acres, which is incredible, right? Given the difficulties they would face with the mountains and the terrain and everything. So that's pretty incredible, but still, as far as we know, haven't found anything, or they just haven't released it.
Yeah, you make a good point about the darkness. I think that's another thing that people, when they go out to rural areas, are usually shocked by how well you can see the stars and how dark it is. Yeah. I think some people have pictured these people searching like Central Park. That's not what it's like. Yeah, there's no street lamps and paths.
The vast majority of the population of the United States lives in very close proximity to cities. Mm-hmm. They're either in urban or suburban areas. It's a huge part of the population. But out when you're not in those areas, when you are in the rural areas, it gets dark. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't have the light pollution. Like in the urban and suburban areas, there's street lights. There's buildings, there's lights coming out. It gets so much just random light. Even when it's subdued, it's still a lot of light. You can still see relatively okay. But when you get out beyond the glow of the cities or even of towns, there's nothing.
Yeah, it's some serious darkness.
One of my favorite moments that I experienced when I moved to Delaware. So I grew up in a fairly rural town called West Grove, Pennsylvania, and not really a whole bunch around. So then when I moved to Delaware, it was very different for me, right? But then I have friends here who grew up in Delaware, lived here their whole lives. And then when they go to the more rural areas like Lancaster, Pennsylvania, areas like that, my one friend was driving up in that area and was like, "Oh my God, I was so scared. I had to turn on my high beams. It was crazy. What are they doing up there that they don't have all these lights?" And I'm thinking, like, do you understand? Like, not a lot of people, therefore the street lights aren't really necessary. That's why cars have high beams. That it's okay. Like, that doesn't mean you're at danger, right? It's just, it's a road and you need to be able to see. And I'll never forget it because it was such a shock for me, culturally, really, that things were so different in a suburban area.
Yeah, I also think a lot of city drivers would be surprised if they drove to an area where they use their turn signals. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't use their turn signals, Jeff.
Mike and I usually leave here at the same time after we record, and I just got to stop being anywhere near Mike because now he's just going to make reference after reference because I always use my turn signals, but now Mike's going to make me seem like I'm a bad driver. That's all it is.
I think turn signals are actually pretty important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have a bias toward turn signals. Yeah.
I do like letting other drivers around know when I'm going to be making a turn.
When you're going to crash into them. It's now.
Unfortunately, sometimes it seems like other drivers, think that's a challenge.
Right.
It's like, "Oh, you're going to turn? No, I'm going to go through there. Try and get through before you get there." What?
I'll show you who's going to turn.
Right. Sometimes it's like the van that has like no engine in it. It's just like the Flintstones van. I've got a, pretty peppy Challenger with 309 horsepower. And if I put the gas down, I'm gone. And like they try and challenge me around a turn. I'm like, okay, that's what you want to do.
Yeah, people change when they get behind the wheel for sure.
I do have my theories about that. That it's the box theory. Like when we're in a box, we're insulated from the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. Like if we're standing, generally most people are standing in line, like even at the DMV or at a grocery store, and somebody kind of walking with their cart bumps into your cart and you go, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. It tends to be a fairly polite thing. But if you're, driving and somebody comes and just doesn't even touch your vehicle, but gets close enough, it's like, hey, son of a blah, 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 blah. Like I know these are expensive things. Like cars are really expensive. But there's no damage, no harm, no foul. But we don't see faces. Mm-hmm. Right? We see other boxes, and that box just violated the space my box is going in, and my box is more important than every other box.
You can relate that to the internet. Right. All you see is a picture usually in the box, so to speak.
It's the same kind of anonymity. I think that's where we see higher levels of road rage because we're not identifying other people based on their face. As soon as we see a human face, our reactions drop way down. We're just seeing boxes, though.
We ever see motorists that that either themselves or have a passenger lean out and like negotiate with people in the traffic? Like, can I get in over there? Like, they always let them in because you're like, there's a person hanging out of the window.
Yeah,
you're not gonna be like, no, it's my space. Right. It's public roads that we all pay for, but I'm gonna take it. They're just like, yeah, sure, oh yeah. But the turn signal, it's like, yeah, it's a threat. It's like, it's a gauntlet. I'm throwing it down.
Are you challenging me for this space on this road? This is my space.
And merging's the worst with that, especially if there's construction or something. It's a kind of last minute, unexpected having to merge. You're definitely not getting in front of me because then I don't know what, but you're definitely not getting in front of me.
It's like they cheated the system. They didn't zipper.
Right.
They went ahead. People don't even zipper well, really. Mm-hmm.
If as soon as you see the sign that there's someone coming, get over a lane, we'd all be better off. But if people get over and then boom, it's like, why?
It was inevitable that this would come up because obviously everyone has strong feelings about this either way.
Absolutely, traffic is. If you drive, traffic is terrible, and everyone has their opinions on traffic stuff. So
yeah,
eventually, in one of these murder parts or Alien Lizard Humanoids, we were going to talk about traffic stuff.
Maybe we just create the traffic part.
No, that would be the road rage part. We'll get there very
That might
quickly.
lead to the murder part.
There was
comes back around.
There was a street racing case I covered not long ago. That the one where the kid got 24 years in prison for killing a child and her mother. He was going 102 and a 35 or 45, I think. It's now 35. It was in Tampa.
Which also comes back to the affluenza case.
Mm-hmm. That was another vehicle.
It was another vehicle.
Yeah, F-250, F-350, I think. Yeah. Terrible. Had a kid, at least one or two in the back as well.
Yeah, they were in the back and
in the bed.
Yeah.
Also it was a king cab or crew cab, whatever.
Yeah. But they had in the bed of the truck and it hit people who were all on the side of the road.
Yeah, trying to repair
a car, and it was terrible.
I think it actually ran into two. Ran into them and someone who stopped to help them. What a catastrophe.
We should do a murder part on that.
That's an interesting case.
It is a really interesting case.
There was a lot of mental health and human behavior discussion because the sentence was so light. Pretty much like people were questioning everybody's judgment and that. It was horrific. It was horrifically light. I mean, and then the kid kept breaking the law and eventually fled the country. Well, I don't get what more did they need. But yeah, that's definitely a case we should
cover.
Yeah, look at that. That's
and that was kind of the other side of the spectrum on the socioeconomic standpoint, though. Mm-hmm. That's why it was affluenza, which is not a disease or a viral load. It was
not a real disease.
It's not a real disease at all.
You don't have to wear a mask around that.
Nope.
Affluenza.
No, you don't have to wear a mask. There actually, unfortunately, is no vaccine for affluenza either.
That's the bad news.
Coming soon, maybe?
That is the bad news. I don't even think that Pfizer's working on it.
Okay.
Moderna's not working on it either.
Not even Johnson & Johnson?
No.
Not a single shot kind of thing?
Nope. I don't think so. Although I think if you're going to get influenza, the vaccine should come in a needle about the size of our needle over there. That is the size needle you should have for
It's a two-part. It's a two-function. Gives you the vaccine and kills you.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Novelty oversized needle to match our
novelty oversized thumbtacks or weapons. Scares me every time he picks that up.
It is really scary.
Thanks for giving me time to run, Mike, because if you get scared, I'm in.
It's like Jeff is over here. He's like, I don't have to run fast. I don't have to run faster than Dr. Grande.
He's got the needle.
I just have to run faster than Mike.
I just have to push Mike.
And you have the cartridge.
Well, there you go. I'm set. All right. And I've got the grave for when it's all finished.
I'm gonna clean up the mess.
I've just got a partial knife over here. I'll just put the bow tie on my neck after I'm dead and just put me in the grave.
You could travel back in time though, or forward.
I could.
So at this point, we see that this search takes place again. All these challenges, right? And they don't find anything, and they have trouble with cell phone service.
Right. There was a lot of communication issues with the search, which when you're searching a large, 700 to 900 acre area, you need to have communication between all your people.
What could have helped in that situation?
Well, like signal extenders could have helped, and actually they did reach out to AT&T,
but not you.
They didn't reach out to me, unfortunately. I mean, I don't have the technology. I gave up on that years ago, to become a counselor. But they reached out to AT&T. AT&T sent people in with mobile range extenders for all the cell phone stuff, and they still ended up having some problems with spotty signal service, but it got better, which is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to get better. It got some better, but it still was a challenge to run that search.
Yeah, again, something we see in rural areas. You would think that every square inch of the United States is covered, but that's not even close to true.
No, in the urban areas, it tends to be, because like every building's got a cell, either a range extender or an antenna itself, and servers, and then even in suburban areas, there's towers everywhere.
Yeah, not so much out in this area. So they asked people to check like surveillance cameras, look at outbuildings, sheds, crawl spaces, barns, and nothing. And I imagine these people did look. Again, small community, they're probably like, well, I don't want anything bad to happen, no check.
I think it was interesting that they said check everywhere, because this little girl could be hiding in an area the size of a legal pad.
They thought she was compressed.
I think that what they were talking about was just like not like entirely compressed down into a legal pad.
They're thinking two-dimensional.
But she's in the 2 dimensions just of length and width. Like she could fit in, like standing up, she could fit in that area, which is actually a very small area for someone to stand in, because she's a very small girl. Mm-hmm. But even with that profile, she could be sitting down with her knees tucked up to her chest. She wouldn't take up much more square footage than that. On that plane. Yeah. But it's still, like, that's a pretty small area. Mm-hmm. And to be trying to find in 900 acres worth of land.
So other than the fact she's missing and no one could find her, we don't see much information until June 18. So move forward. And here we see that Donald, he goes by Don. I think his name's Donald Wells. He makes his first public statement, and he's made quite a few. We'll talk about a few of them, but so local channel or whatever comes out and throw their camera on their shoulder, and he's just going to town, right? Not really being careful, which I find exculpatory, right? Like I would think if he was guilty, he'd be cautious and not give a lot of interviews, but he seems to be pretty free speaking in front of the camera. He said that Summer would never leave on her own. Someone must have taken her. A lot of people read into this as well, of course, because, again, not much information. But he's positive. Go forward 8 more days, and the authorities start looking for this Toyota Tacoma. It's a Gen 1, 1998 to 2000. It's a Gen 1. Mm-hmm. Right? I used to have 2 of them. I had a 95 and a 96.
Either one of them red?
No, they were white and tan.
Okay, so we can rule out. Yeah. We can rule out Dr. Grande.
And no full bed ladder rack either. But this one, I don't think they've ever found this vehicle. But it's interesting that they're looking for it. Mm-hmm. What do they know?
Right. And it's one of those that came from a tip from somebody, so they're looking for it. And everybody's caught onto this one. It's like, we should find the Tacoma. But wait, why?
Yeah. And you would think too, again, not many people in the area. Now I know Tacomas are popular, but even for an area where, people get a lot of utility out of vehicles, a Gen 1 Tacoma is pretty old. You're talking 21 to 23 years old. Mm-hmm. There can't be that many.
That fit that description too. Full ladder rack.
Yeah.
That's a smaller truck, right? So sure, of course you can put a ladder rack on it, but it's not going to be as typical. Now maybe in a more rural area, lower socioeconomic, so maybe they're getting more use out of a smaller vehicle, but still it's not typical. Not typical you're going to put that on a ladder rack on anything other than a full size. Some other things in Don's interviews that people have read into, just his behavior, right? So lack of emotion. People would say like he's not pleading for people to find his daughter or bring his daughter back to them. They rarely use Summer's name, and they're really just a flat affect. So of course we've talked about the culture, right? And so there's a lot of things there to be said about the culture and just the way that many people in a rural area might go about speaking or presenting themselves, or even the way that they look, right? So Dr. Grande, you said about people being tough or just doing things themselves, and that comes with a certain look, right? Mm-hmm. You look a little bit more worn because that's what it is.
There's a lot of physical labor.
Right, which he was a physical laborer. He is a physical laborer. So,
and there's not much emphasis on aesthetics, right? So like you're not going to see a lot of people overly concerned about dressing really well, wearing clothes that aren't dirty. If they get a scar somewhere, they're not going to get it treated to remove it or whatever. Like they wear their scars with some level of indifference. It's just part of getting older.
Depending on how you got it, maybe pride.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so we do see maybe a cultural difference with Don and Candus. There's a lot of speculation about their personalities. They have been fairly consistent. We don't see mood swings. At least I haven't. In the videos that are available, they seem to be like highly predictable. Yeah. Now, at one point, it was on July 15, Don said that statistically speaking, which I found that interesting that he would be making a reference to statistics, but okay, who knows? Maybe he has studied them.
Part-time statistical analyst or something, maybe.
Yeah, to drywall mutter and part-time statistical analyzer.
One arm doing the drywall, one arm doing statistics. It could happen.
You never know.
It's like one arm. It's like, okay, put up this thing in drywall. Let's run an ANOVA. No, wait, MANOVA.
Yeah, so interesting. I think statistically speaking, though, becomes a phrase that people use when they're really not talking about anything grounded in statistics. But
he's probably been talking to law enforcement and maybe lawyers by this point too.
Could be.
Right.
Could be, yeah. So he said, again, statistically speaking, there's a good chance Summer is already dead, which seems quite callous under the circumstances. But he does say, he follows up, I hate to think that. I love her with all my heart. If nothing else, I will see her in the resurrection. Of course, a reference to, I imagine, his faith beliefs where when everybody dies at some point, everybody will come back to life and get to go to heaven or hell. So he's presuming, I guess, he's going to go to heaven. Another assumption there, who knows? And
I don't think very many people like to assume that they're going to go the other way.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I do think that most people are, I'm a good person. I'm going to go to heaven.
That's fair.
I do think there are some people who do expect to go to hell, though. I don't think that Don's one of them.
Yeah. He views himself more as heaven-bound, I think.
Don's stepsister gave an interview with somebody on YouTube, and she would say, so the question was posed, was Don religious before this? Or, was this something that came out of Summer's disappearance? And his stepsister, who she reported that she has known him since she was 5 or he was 5, very young. She's known him for a while. That, and we haven't talked about this yet, but Don has pretty extensive history with infractions with the law. And
we'll get to the whole
with the law.
Yeah, there's quite a bit to unpack there. Yeah.
So she would say that every time he got in trouble with the law, it would usually be a pattern of get in trouble, kind of find religion again, or find some kind of faith, and I'm going to change. I'm going to stop doing this, and then within a little bit, it would kind of be dropping that and go back to the criminal acts. Now, again, that was his stepsister. This didn't come from Don. Of course, we can't confirm this or not, but there are videos and pictures of the family in church with Summer. So they are a family that has some kind of involvement with the church in the area. And so if the resurrection talk is genuine or not, I guess we can't really say at this point. But it is an interesting thing that Don would go to that, and that's another thing that people would read into.
Right. Well, to be resurrected, right, you have to be dead. And I think that's the part that has stunned people, that he would, it's early in the investigation to be jumping that far.
Yeah.
But especially in some of our fictional television shows, police dramas and things like that, they talk about that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If she's not found within the first 24 or 48 hours, your likelihood you're going to find her dead.
You got 6 minutes.
You got 6 more minutes before it's the 24-hour mark, and then she's dead. Like, we know that. Like, okay. I mean, yeah, that tends to be the case especially in cities.
Well, and with younger, she's a child.
Yeah. But it's entirely possible that she slipped somewhere. If she fell down a well, she could still be alive.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, probably at this point, probably not.
Right.
But because this is, September now. We're in September. This happened back in it was June
15th.
Yeah, June 15th. So I mean, that's several months. If she hasn't been found at this point, it's unlikely that she survived just because of the elements. If it was something like that, like falling down a well or falling into a cave or something, she just wouldn't have had food to survive. Mm-hmm. Even if she had water, she wouldn't have had much in the way of food to be able to survive. That's if she wasn't, eaten by a wild animal that night or abducted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, Don was right in the sense that being grim is accurate. But it's just, I think people are just, again, surprised that he, of all people, would say that when, usually parents of missing children hold out hope unrealistically, like they're unrealistically optimistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Years and years later, there's still cases where the child went missing like 10, 20 years ago, and they're getting the updated, things you can get, like with the updated, what they call aging software, right. And they're spreading, and look, they may be alive, who knows? But when they were missing under circumstances where like their blood was found and an offender was convicted, things like that, they're still like, no, they're out there. So there's a lot of, and I get it, like I get the reason, but we're not seeing that at all.
Right. Like Eric Gosden in England, like he's missing 13 or 15 years or something like that, or longer. I can't remember exactly the exact.
Andrew Gosden?
Andrew Gosden, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like they're still putting out age-progressed pictures of him. It's been so many years.
There's some hope. I think I can see that because there was no DNA, no blood, like no evidence that anyone hurt him. And he was very smart. That's a case we should look at.
It is a case we should look at.
I've talked about that one a lot. Yeah.
But this one, again, there's no evidence in this case either that we're aware of. It's been released to let us know, to talk about it. At this point, it's just as free of evidence as the Gosden case. Mm-hmm. But to hear, Gosden's dad is still to this day, it's like, we just want him to come home.
And I hope he's right.
And he said, at this point, he said, I do believe that my son is dead, but, I still hold out hope. And to hear Don go, well, statistically speaking, that she's not found in the first 24 hours.
If you read between the lines, it feels like he's kind of saying, if everyone went home, it wouldn't be that big a deal. That's not what he's saying, but that's what the connotation is.
What people hear.
Yeah, certainly what they hear.
And 90% of all statistics are just made up.
Abraham Lincoln said that,
Abraham
right?
Lincoln, yeah, right. No, I think Abraham Lincoln said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
Right. That's right.
He emailed that, right?
He did. Yeah. He emailed that. But what Sam Clemens said about statistics, I love his quote. Right? It's like there's lies, damn lies, in statistics.
Was it? Yeah, there's actually been a number of quotes. It was one by Tukey, who's a famous statistician. It just slipped my mind. Something about if you torture the data long enough, they'll confess. Yeah, I think that's my favorite. The Tukey test is a very well-known statistic, and he was a legend. But it's absolutely true. You can manipulate statistics really quite easily and get any result from in a research study you want. It's kind of scary because the peer reviews, they don't really read that section.
No, that's not the point of the peer review. Remember, like the peer review is just to make sure that your method is sound. If your method is sound and your data collection is sound, we don't care about what you got out of it.
We don't care about the actual calculations.
Your results and calculations we don't care about. But I mean, we want to know about your method for doing this.
Yeah, unfortunately, research doesn't always have a lot of integrity behind it, not as much as people think.
I mean, that's what repeatability is supposed to be about. If you do something and they peer review it and say, yeah, okay, publish this, and somebody comes along and goes, I don't know if that data is right. No, I don't like that. Reproduce it.
Mm-hmm. That's the key.
Yeah,
right?
That is the key. Unfortunately, we do have a reproducibility problem in science today. It's really sexy and glamorous to be the first person to discover something new. It's not as nobody cares when you're like the 15th person to do the experiment.
I found the same thing that those guys found.
Yeah, but you know what? In science, that's actually the best thing.
Yeah, that's
right. You want to find the same thing that everybody else found, because if you find something different, either you screwed up or everyone else did.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's something that we should talk about in a video someday. Literacy, like in terms of how people consume literature. Probably weave it into a case where that was significant. Like what's that case? Full big case. I think it was a case in Australia that I think involved statistics, and there was another one, Sally somebody in Britain, that was the famous one where there was some logical errors. I think that would be an excellent case for us to cover. It was a SIDS thing where I think she had two children that died of SIDS, that could have died of SIDS, and they said, no, if 2 die, you definitely did it statistically, which is not at all true.
One of the things, I'm sorry.
No, she went to prison. It was terrible. Eventually, she was exonerated.
One of the things that the viewers love to hear is that, along with this topic, fun fact is that Dr. Grande was our statistics professor for me and Mike, and people love to hear that you were our professor. So that'll be like, he was what, and he did what, and he taught you what.
He taught our research class, and he taught our tests and measures and assessments.
Right.
Yeah. I used to, after I graduated, I used to go back and help him teach the assessments class.
Mm-hmm. Did you teach it on your own at some point, Mike, or was it?
I teach undergrad research methods in behavioral science.
Okay.
I know you filled in for me a few times too.
Yeah. I filled in for other professors as well in the program. So I like to teach. I have fun with it.
Teaching is fun. Yeah. So moving back to Don here, we see that here we come up with more unverified information, which I think is the theme of this particular episode. Integrity. Information integrity. That's the theme.
Unverified would be the name of this episode.
So Don said that Summer's 3 older brothers were removed by Child Protective Services. Now, the reason he gave, I think, is what... Now, let's just assume it's true for a moment. I don't know if it's true, but again, I think it would be hard to lie about it with the scrutiny at this level. So let's just assume it's true for a moment. He said his reason was the house is not safe. Trespassers were approaching, and the family received threats.
He also said that he was drinking. So just said it wasn't a safe environment.
Yeah. Well, that seems a little more realistic. But the whole idea that the people are sneaking up through the woods in rural Tennessee to get to this house in the middle of nowhere, I don't believe it for a second.
Maybe not before Summer went missing, but afterwards, when it gets bigger, and the death threats, I absolutely believe.
Yeah, that I would believe. But people actually going out there to that, maybe one, I doubt they'd find a place.
All it takes is one for somebody to get scared
That's
about
true.
it. But I do think that absolutely his drinking and behavior would have been more reason CPS would come in and take them out. And we don't know anything about Candus's behavior that was going on during that time. But I also know that CPS is quick to take kids out of any situation that they think that when there's even a hint of danger.
Well, because there's a huge price to be paid if they're wrong,
right?
And they'd rather just be safe than sorry. Yeah.
The so the CPS department in Tennessee is called DCS, Department of Children's Services. And so my understanding is that not only Don and Candus's family, but also Don's family and Candus's family, or their relatives or people that they grew up with, have pretty extensive histories with DCS, with the Department of Children's Services in Tennessee, and CPS in other states, I think, too. And so we see pictures of their house, of Don and Candus's house, and it's really not, doesn't look like a great place to live, right? Like it's pretty unkept, things like that. So that doesn't really surprise me, especially as this has gotten recognition, right? People see that and they're like, oh gosh, I think something's wrong here. There's also been questions raised about Summer's dental hygiene. Her teeth look pretty bad for a 5-year-old. That's pretty significant. So neglect has come up in this. There was also, and this is again unverified, so I heard this somewhere, but it seems to be a popular narrative that that DCS was considering removing the children from the house at this point anyway. This is what relatives have said, relatives of Don and Candus have said. So I think that the family was on the radar of DCS. And I know that there's been other situations with Don and other relatives of Don where the CPS agency of whatever state it was involved. So I don't think that they're unfamiliar with the family. And so I think it probably wasn't too much of a stretch for Don or Candus to be like, all right, fine. Don's getting both parents, I'm sure, are very stressed with this investigation. So Don, it says, I was drinking and it was just not a good environment for the boys. Of course, people coming up to the house potentially. So I don't think it was too much of a stretch. And maybe they already knew these people, had frequent contact with them to begin with.
Yeah. And for context here as well, unfortunately, drinking is often popular in rural areas. It's one of those things where there's a lot of different theories about it, but for whatever reason, it does seem to be overrepresented. And Don has a pretty long history with alcohol, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So let's talk about their histories. They both actually have criminal records. Let's start with Don. I've seen different stories on this. It seems clear he has been convicted of a number of felonies, including burglary, theft, forgery, and spent significant time in prison. I know he has spent prison in Utah, but we don't see really necessarily reliable or credible looking reports about the details. There's all kinds of wild stories. I don't know what's true and what's not. There's people who said he's admitted to things. I didn't hear that on any interview, but I might have missed it. Maybe he said something. So a lot of criminal activity over a long time. More recently, October 2020, he was arrested for domestic assault. He said that he was, or it's alleged he was drinking and throwing things. The police arrived. Apparently he was intoxicated. Candus filed for an order of protection, but then withdrew it, and the charges were dropped.
Yeah, at one point, Don actually said that he wasn't even there at that time, that he was in Utah. And the reason she was just making trouble and trying to be dramatic because she wasn't happy with what he was doing. And that she put the paperwork in for the protection order just to mess with him. But the reason she dropped the charges is because they were going to have to go to court. And she was obviously going to from his report, this is what I've heard, that she was obviously going to have to drop all things and stuff anyway because they were going to find out that it wasn't true. But the police report says that he was there and that he was intoxicated at the time. So either that's not the incident that led to the
I'm pretty sure it
thing,
is.
but I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah. I looked at all that stuff, and as far as I could tell, Don was lying. At least based on, if the official records are true, then he's lying, as far as I can tell. There could be something I don't know. Maybe it was a different day, but sure looked like the same day. He said the whole incident was based on lack of communication, and Candus apologized to him. Does not match the police report. I don't know how to rectify that discrepancy without thinking he's not being honest. This is, I think, important because it's kind of a concrete, it's kind of an anchor in a case that's just floating at sea to say, all right, he doesn't appear to be telling the truth.
The interesting thing, though, is that everybody says he was at work when Summer went missing.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter how much he's lying about all these other past things, it doesn't seem like he could have at all been involved in.
He has an alibi.
Right. He has a pretty solid alibi.
Yeah. Yeah. Not much question about that. I think the question would be, did somebody else do something and he's going along?
Yeah.
Like, does he really know?
One of the things I think that is pretty bad for the image of Don is family members of his would report that, or have reported that there was sexual abuse going on between, Don was sexually abusing his sister when they were younger. Don went to jail, I think, for the first time when he was 17 or something like that. And his oldest son is a registered sex offender.
Yeah, 34-year-old.
So, yeah. I mean, that doesn't paint a good picture for anybody, but it definitely doesn't paint a good picture for somebody whose daughter is missing. And there's a lot of questions about who did it.
Yeah, under extremely mysterious circumstances. Right. So, so Don, he's in and out of jail and prison, multi-time felon. That is not common that's not something we see in rural areas. Right? There's no overrepresentation of felonies as far as I know. So he's deviating from the area here. The alcohol might be a little more common, yes, but committing a lot of felonies across multiple states, no. There's nothing that connects to the context. This is just Don. Just who he is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now Candus has a much more limited record. Looks like domestic abuse and disorderly conduct in Wisconsin. Not necessarily a big deal, but doesn't look great. It'd be nice if it wasn't there. It wasn't particularly recent, in 2003.
I was kind of shocked to see the domestic abuse from a female, which, of course, that happens. But as far as I know, you guys may have different perspectives, but as far as I know, that's pretty uncommon.
Yeah, it is.
Now, maybe it was something where, I just don't know the details, and it was like, oh, okay, whatever. But I don't know that I really personally have ever, or professionally have ever heard of that. I know it happens, of course, but I don't think it happens very often. So that paints a very different picture of somebody in a case like this.
I have had a number of female clients who've had domestic abuse charges. Most of the time, there's involvement with substance use in those cases. But usually, from what I've seen, it's especially common for a thing like that to kind of happen, and then charges not being pressed.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because nobody wants to get anybody in trouble. Let's figure this out. Whereas if it's the other way around, it tends to be like, yeah, we're going to press charges. Mm-hmm. Right. Like just absolutely tends to be a double standard on that side of things.
It's getting better.
It is.
But my feeling is that police perpetuate this, right? Most police officers are men by far, right? Vast majority. And there tends to be, I think, they tend to be conservative. And the conservative mentality often is, men are the ones who commit crimes and women aren't. Now, even though they're following a different playbook, they can put their finger on the scale as police officers and follow through more when they see a male domestic violence person. And again, their rule book says, no, equality. Just like family court with custody. It's supposed to be, nope, no gender factor. We don't even see gender. Sure. Statistics in that case do not lie.
There was a body cam video I saw at one point of police responding to a domestic disturbance call. I don't remember where it was. It wasn't in Delaware. I don't remember where exactly it was, but there's some yelling back and forth, and police are trying to calm it down. They're trying to de-escalate. The woman is a small woman in comparison to the guy who's fairly large. She jumps on his back and just starts pummeling on his head. and they're like, whoa, 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 let's get this. And they move in, and like they're hesitant to try and touch her, grab her, pull her off. But when the guy who's being pummeled in the head kind of shifts his shoulder and kind of bucks her off, they grab him, slam him down on the ground, and go, "That's domestic abuse charge." Like,
Call the SWAT team.
they're like, it's like, holy crap! Like, I'm sorry, if anybody was on me, pummeling me in the head, I would try and buck them off of my back. I think it's a natural reaction. But the police, again, like, they weren't going to, like, they could have tased her because she was doing this. But they didn't. They could have grabbed her physically, pulled her off of him. Didn't. But as soon as he made a move to defend himself, oh, that's the abuse. There's where we see, and I think that's an extreme case. But they cuffed him and took her back into the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's traditional gender roles, right? Like, the conservative ideology would tend to adhere to that a little bit more. I think that's what we see with the police. Yeah. Same thing in the military. Same dynamic plays out. So let's take a look now at the theories in this case, right? So we talked about Candus. Oh, I wanted maybe one of you could speak to it. I don't know much about this, but there's a sister that went missing. Candus' sister?
Yeah, years ago, Candus had a sister. I believe Amy?
Rose. I'm sorry.
It was Rose. It was Rose. Yeah, she went missing, what was that, around 2003, 2004?
I don't know the date, but it's been a while.
It's been a while.
They still have a picture of her in the kitchen. Candus does in their kitchen, but that's one of those things that's just strange. Like, wait a minute, you've got a sister that's been missing. Now your daughter's missing, and of course people go missing. We hear about it sometimes, but in the same family, is that common? I don't think so.
Yeah, not missing without a trace, right? Like, to go missing for a while, like running away, but the whole, like, they're just gone with no criminal explanation, like nobody arrested or suspected. It's pretty unusual these days, and even probably back when, I don't think it was too long ago, right? Like, 50 years ago, whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's, with technology, it's hard to disappear.
Yeah. It really is. But it's unfortunate that Candus has had to go through that, and then this missing child. If she has some, and I'm not saying she is, speculation, and we'll talk about a lot of different things. But if she had something to do with Summer dying or going missing, then that's one thing. But if she had nothing to do with it, then this is a terrible tragedy of two people in her life that have just gone missing. And investigators have said there's no connection between those two cases, like, at all. Like, the sister went missing years and years ago in Wisconsin, and Summer's here. Like, there's no connection between those two things.
Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that Candus was there for both.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where you get into talking about the statistics with SIDS. People have said, what are the chances that you would be involved with two completely gone without a trace cases? Very unlikely, which doesn't mean she did it. It just means it's very unlikely. And it is. I mean, it is. I think it is a raise an eyebrow moment, but I don't know if it really means anything.
It was 2009.
2009.
August 21st, 2009 in Polk County, Wisconsin.
I've even seen the theory that maybe she came back and perpetrated an abduction. Which is like, what? Why would she do that? Likely she's not alive.
It's very likely that she's not alive.
So one of the things that I think this brings up for people is the, Rose goes missing, Summer goes missing. There's a lot of neglect, potentially neglect in the families, and also Candus and Don. They both experienced neglect growing up as well. And I think it probably just had to do a lot with the area they grew up in, the socioeconomic. We talked about this. Don grew up in a 2-bedroom trailer, I think, and I think there was something like 5+ kids in this family. So mom and dad and like 5+ kids. So here's, here they're all crammed in 1 bedroom, or, which is sure, the area they live in, the poverty, whatever else they were living in. So I think that's probably what they've known growing up and in their lives. But people would bring in ideas about selling the kids into slavery or sex trafficking, things like that. Now, the interesting thing is that Don's family members have said, so follow me here for a second.
I'm trying.
I'm trying to. I think, you know what, we need to connect some more dots here. Maybe.
Here's the yarn.
No more knitting, Mike.
Darn.
So Don's family member has said that Don's ex-wife came to the sister's house, Don's sister's house one day with the kids, or a kid, one of the kids, and said, I witnessed Don trying to sell, I think it was their oldest son, trying to sell their oldest son for drugs. And so, of course, like, well, that's strange, you know. Who knows if it's true, of course, but that comes up, right? So now you have Rose, who's missing, and now Summer, who's missing, and a family that doesn't necessarily have a lot of money, they don't come from an area that has a lot of money. And so that comes up, right? It's like, okay, so we know that modern day slavery exists, right? We know that that exists. We know that people are sold into that. And we know that young girls or young people, maybe in general, are generally the target of that. Less resistance, right? More control. An adult has more control over somebody at a young age and more of an ability to shape that person, groom that person into who they want them to become, right? Mm-hmm. So so I can understand where people are connecting these dots, making these assumptions. Now, of course, if it's true or not, I have no idea, and maybe we'll never know. But it does make people think. It does get the gears turning, so to speak, which is, you know, I hope not, right? I hope not. I hope that never happens to anybody. But there's strange things here, right? Strange things that just don't add up.
Yeah. I think it would be remiss when a 5-year-old girl goes missing to not suspect that at some level. Yeah. Because that's a valued demographic for that criminal population. No question that would be a prime target for them.
Right.
You know, if she was 25 or 35 or 55, it would be reduced. Probably wouldn't be one of the first theories that comes up. But then with that report that you're talking about from, was his sister or?
Yeah, I think it was his sister. The stepsister definitely alluded to it. She didn't necessarily say that happened, at least not that I remember, but she alluded to it, presented it as facts from her perspective. So I'm led to believe that she has no reason to lie about it, but maybe she does. You know, maybe she's got an agenda too. So again, we see a bunch of he said, she said, a bunch of speculation, right? But that's as much of a source as we have, our family members at this point. So that's all really we have to go off of.
And it is interesting, though, especially in areas where there's not as much entertainment opportunities. There tends to be more in the way of gossip. Now, gossip is everywhere. It's not just in rural communities. It's everywhere. The content of the gossip just spreads. Social media has made that easier, but it's a favorite pastime. I think it's a human pastime. It's not just an American pastime. It's everywhere in the world. Gossip is a pastime. So gossip goes, and it goes, and it goes, and people start to remember the gossip more than what actually happened.
You get the sense that if people thought she was abducted by aliens, there'd be some relative like, you know, Don mentioned one time paying off an alien to come get some. Like, you're going to find that one moment where you're going to connect some dots and be like, wait a sec, well, connecting the dots is a big thing. Yeah.
Hey, Don was 17 years old. He was out in the woods. He said he was abducted by aliens. Now Summer's been abducted by aliens?
Somebody's going to quote you on that for like a book or something.
Right, that's going to be Mike said on Murder Part that Don had been abducted by aliens. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the theories. So
there's alien abduction.
I came up with 4. Yeah, alien abduction. I came up with 4, but you might have some more. I'll go through my 4, and let's see if we can look at some of the probabilities and speculation around this. So again, no one knows. Right? Just guessing, tossing things around. So first theory, Summer walked out. She was barefoot. Now, I understand that's not unusual for that community probably, right?
It's not.
Sure. But still, 5, right? Walked out so far as to get lost and not be found within, what was it, 700 acres?
Something like that. Far distance.
Yeah, I don't know what that radius would be, but it wouldn't be like 2 feet. Like it would be quite some distance. Mm-hmm. You would think that she would have turned up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Now the door did open, as we talked about, into the backyard, so she could have.
Yeah.
Candus and Don would say that would be completely unlike her. She would never wander. Candus said that she taught her, never go beyond. There was a swing on the property that Summer loved to go to and swing on.
Yeah, because kids have never pushed boundaries before.
Right. So Candus and Don would say that was very unlike her. Other families would say that, other family members would say that it was very much like her to wander off. So some confusion there, further confusion. But I think you bring up a good point, Dr. Grande. There's only so far that she could go. She's young, and if the adults had trouble with this terrain, how much more so for a 5-year-old?
Right. Yeah, have you ever seen the movie The Fugitive, which was based on a TV series?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the imagery I get.
Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was actually
I didn't kill my wife.
It's a pretty good movie.
It was. Yeah.
I've
seen this one.
You see,
because it was on TV.
The one-armed man.
I like how they really took their time with the bus scene.
Oh yeah.
They really they knew that was the big deal, and they put some money into it, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
I still love that. But to her walking out of the house, okay, so I know that parents will often, and have in my lifetime, leave younger kids in the care of older kids, especially in a rural area where you don't expect anything bad to happen. And you're not leaving the property, right? I'm going over to grandma's, which is literally 15 feet that way. Watch your sister. Okay. It's not an unreasonable thing. Mm-hmm. But they're gathered around the phone or gathered around a computer or whatever, watching whatever. Yeah, sure, Mom. I think we might have mentioned this earlier in this episode. She goes, Candus Bly goes off to talk to Candace Harrer. And yeah, Summer goes downstairs. And then she decides to walk out. And she's gone. Now, one of the things that you mentioned a few minutes ago was Don and drugs. You mentioned that. And drugs tend to be another one, along with gossip, one of those other recreational activities done in many different areas when money is an issue. Because it's a lot cheaper than trying to go to the movies 5 nights a week. You get a little bit of your favorite substance, and you go to town. If she went over to her mom's, and I'm not saying that she has an issue, but there have been some people online who have made comments about the entire family, adult side of the family, having had some substance use issues, and it wouldn't surprise me given the extensive criminal history on Don's side, his admitted alcohol use.
We know he's certainly used it, and it's available in the house.
Yeah. So, if she went over to her mom's to help with the brace on, and then was just speculation, hey, why don't we, share a pill? She could have been knocked out for half an hour or an hour, and then got up and walked over thinking only a couple of minutes has passed. And she goes back into the house, and that's plenty of time for Summer to have been wandering for an hour and lost.
And the sedating effects the police wouldn't notice because they wouldn't be thinking about Candus.
Right.
So,
and if it was only, and if the sedative effect had been kind of reversed by adrenaline, or had worn off because it's been, by the time they got there, it had been long enough for the half-life to have just driven it out of her system.
She also looks emotionless, so maybe they wouldn't know. Right. She's not really animated.
She might have been emotionless because she was still high. I'm just speculating. I'm not making sure but I have seen people who have been, in that condition. Mm-hmm. And one of the funniest things I saw was a person who had knew how to game the system in rehab. He's sitting there, he's on methadone maintenance. he's just had his dose. He's sitting, nodding off, and we're doing a bio. And it's like, okay, so what kind of issues do you have? He's like, I have anxiety. Like, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety right now.
Talk about incongruence, right?
It's a huge incongruence. Like, it's like, yeah, really?
Tell me about it. Tell me
Tell
all
me
about
this
that.
anxiety. He's like, oh, depression too. I'm fine depressed too. Like, he knew all the answers to give because he'd been through the system enough times. It's like, okay, well, I got to put that in the system. Depression, anxiety. So okay, but that's the thing. That flat affect, very very much comes with the opioids, certain other sedative type drugs.
Yeah, so there could be any number of explanations.
Any other number of explanations for what why her affect is the way it is. Of course, that could just be the way she is.
Right. Yeah. In these cases, we don't really have a baseline. So it's not like we have hundreds of Candus Bly videos to say, wait a second.
We might, though, on TikTok.
We haven't done a deep dive into Candace's TikTok. I admit that.
I have no interest in that personally, but I mean, maybe there's viewers out there that are just coming through the TikTok stuff.
No, usually she's really animated on TikTok. Like, okay. But again, that could be a character she's putting on for TikTok. We have no basis for our evaluation other than what we've seen.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is a very flat affect, dull emotional response from her.
And not somebody who's really upset, at least not visibly upset. All right, so that's the walkout theory. Next theory is this one's popular and a lot of speculation. Something happened, perhaps an accident, maybe all the way up to a homicide, and this is basically just a cover-up. I've talked before about how they're giving a lot of interviews. If they were guilty, they're giving a lot of interviews. Their stories, like, they're going to have to be congruent over time. They don't seem sophisticated. I would think they would have inculpated themselves by now.
Mm-hmm. Slipped up somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, those details don't match or something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the sheriff's department, one of their representatives said that they want to use every tool they possibly can use in this investigation. And when they were asked about, have you given a polygraph? She just said, we want to use every tool that we have available, kind of indicating that, yes, we've done this, but not outright saying it, because they're being really tight-lipped. Both Candus and Don have said, yeah, we took polygraphs and we both passed. Again, this is just the word of Don and...
Yeah, right. But also pass and fail means nothing because the police just tell you what they need to tell you. Right. If they want to get your trust, like they know you did it, but they want to get your trust, like you passed with flying colors. I've never seen anybody's honest, because then you'll go make mistakes.
Right. And we know we've talked about the polygraph before. It is a completely invalid and unreliable tool for determining truth. And most investigators know this.
Yeah. Well, so they can also say that you're lying and try to sweat you. Right? Those are two. So, but the police will only usually say, remember, it's all fantasy, right? They're making stuff up or reading something that doesn't mean anything. But they're going to go with an extreme. You're clear. Oh, feel free to go and talk on your phone. Yeah, all you want, and hang out with your friends. They're not wearing a wire. You're totally clear. I know you didn't do it.
None of your friends are going to wear wires ever. Don't just talk to them the way you normally would.
Talking to this microphone while you're at it.
Jeff's wearing a wire right now.
I definitely am. We're not only we being recorded, but anything we say before and after recording, think you guys are safe or something? No.
Yeah, so on one extreme, right, complete honest, or they go to the other extreme, right, like, the machine doesn't lie. It says you're lying. You're lying. Don't blame the machine. Don't blame the machine. Don't try to say you didn't do it. And it's extreme, like, you failed. No one's ever failed. The machine almost caught fire. You're lying so much.
In The Simpsons. There's a Simpsons episode about that. It was Homer. They hooked him up to the polygraph, and they asked him one question. He's like, "No," catches on fire.
Again, one of the best written shows ever.
So funny. We can always find a way to bring a Simpsons episode reference into something like this. But the other thing they might do with the polygraph is not tell the person. They'll be like, okay, thank you for your time, and go. And then they tell everyone else the results were inconclusive, and let everybody else kind of put pressure on them.
Which means they lied.
Right.
That's what people think.
Right. That's what people think, because there's only two outcomes. There's technically three outcomes, right? There's lied, inconclusive, and truthful. But unless they say you passed and you're truthful, everybody knows you lied. Mm-hmm. But they won't tell the individual who took it was inconclusive. They tell everybody else.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to put pressure to get people to inculpate them, to remember things like the alien abduction stories and bring those forward.
Right. But again, it doesn't test any of that. It's just a tool that the investigators are using for that, and that Maury Povich loves to use for.
And Phil McGraw.
And Phil McGraw and Steve Wilkos. Like, they love to use those things as if they are gospel truth. They're not.
They're one of the most frightening developments in law enforcement, the polygraph. It's utterly ridiculous. And it seems like it's only increasing. People want answers, and they turn to these machines. But like I've said, you might as well hook people up to a toaster, because at least that way you get toast. Right?
If the toast comes out dark, you're lying.
Let's wait for the toast.
Wait for the toast.
I think I've told you guys before that at a young age, my dad used to hook us up to a multimeter, and that was his lie detector. And so, one would go on a piece of metal, one lead would go on a piece of metal. There'd be an alligator clip involved somewhere, and that would go onto like our finger. And then the other lead would go onto like our head or something. And I just have this image of my older sister, my dad trying to catch her in a lie. And she was clearly lying about something. But my dad had, these things hooked up to her. And I'm young. I'm like, oh my, how does he have these tools to just figure out if people are lying or not? And I was amazed, right? And scared to death of lying, because I was definitely going to be figured out because of these magnificent advanced tools that he had. And then, of course, I find out years later what a multimeter is and how it just shows random numbers sometimes. And I was like, oh no, this is embarrassing. But sometimes, sometimes just that element of suggestivity, like that suggestiveness, that somebody could say, this is definitely going to tell me what I need to know. Mm-hmm. And if you're truthful, it's going to tell me. If you lie, it's going to tell me, right? So look at all these things moving. Oh, you just said something, and it's telling me what I need to hear, right? And if somebody doesn't know any better, which majority of people don't, right? Right. If somebody doesn't know any better, they're going to be like, oh, you're right. And, that increases their fear, and, I gotta lie, or I gotta tell the truth, or I gotta tell them what they want to hear, or, I gotta figure out how to game the system here. And so it creates an environment that could be could really help the police in those moments, whether it's wrong or right. Of course, we know that it's wrong. It doesn't show anything, but it could really help the police to lead to something, whether the confession's true or not, but it could lead the police to know something. Right.
I think William Moulton Marston, who invented the polygraph, even said, like, this does not test truth or falsehood. And there's all sorts of ways. It's like the multimeter thing. There's no one that a friend of mine's dad used to use. It was like, put your left arm out, like out straight. Right, and then puts his hand on, like, okay, say your name, like, what is your name? And then push down at the same time. And then it's like, ask you something that's obviously false, and then push harder to force your arm down and think that, like, oh, well, it's, that's going to tell when you're lying. Because if you're able to hold your arm out steady, that means you're telling the truth. But it's the opposite side of the brain that does lying and creativity. So if you're lying, you're going to be weaker in that arm. The problem is it's just you're holding your arm out there, and it gets tired.
That's perfect. Right? That's perfect.
So then at that point, you just ask your kid whatever, and tell them, like, this is a CIA secret technique, was what this person's dad told him was great. Like,
it's the same thing you see with the neuro-linguistic programming.
Oh yeah.
Right. If your eyes go up and to the left, that means whatever, and up and to the right.
To the left is lying, down and to the right is telling the truth.
Retrieving
you're accessing, memory.
Accessing, yeah.
Yeah.
Neuro-linguistic programming is the only part of that has any kind of validity is the changing of vocabulary. Like, self-association of vocabulary can change outlook on events. I saw this very clearly difference by adding one word to a sentence. I had a client who started talking about a trauma, and the statement that she made was, that was the moment that broke me. And after several sessions, we talked about it, and she said that over and over and over again. I'm like, that's a very powerful statement in your life. Mm-hmm. The neurolinguistic programming aspect comes in where it's like, okay, let's add one word to that sentence and change the connotation of it. So we added the word almost. So she started telling herself, instead of that was the moment that broke me, she started saying that was the moment that almost broke me. And that became a very powerful change in her life. She was able to turn around and be like, you know what? Because if I'm broken, I can't be put back together. Mm-hmm. I can't be fixed. But if I'm almost broken, that means I didn't break in the first place, mm-hmm. and now I'm whole.
There's hope for me.
And there's hope for me because I continue. Maybe I'm tarnished, but I'm not broken. Yeah. And it was very powerful. And that's the neurolinguistic programming part that works. But that's a self-directed thing. There are other people. There are shows out there. Like one of my favorites, Leverage, tried to use the neurolinguistic programming thing. It was like, okay, we're going to show people images and associate words with certain things, and then like whenever I touch this person on the wrist, they're going to feel they need to drink a cup of tea or something. It's like it doesn't work that way. You can't program someone that way. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, and also I think NLP is really marketed to people that do not want to complete a traditional education. It's got a countercultural feel. Like, you don't need a bachelor's degree, you don't need a master's degree. You can just take NLP and you can be just like a licensed counselor or a licensed social worker. And a lot of those quasi-therapy, pseudotherapies have that kind of announcement that goes along with them. Like we're all just, in our own fantasy for studying textbooks and working with people and meeting qualifications and weird stuff like that.
Weird stuff like getting a graduate degree.
Yeah. Like years of hard work, and...
like, that's for suckers. Like, why do you have to get 2,000 hours worth of direct client contact? I can just go take an NLP course and
I can see where somebody's eyes are moving just as easy as you can with your fancy degree.
With that being said, one of the things, since we don't have a lot of information here, one of the things that, if you search for information on this case, one of the things that you will see more often than I would like to see is psychics trying to weigh in on this, and
they did
what happened to them and stuff like that.
The police even said that they weren't using them.
Right. Yeah. Which means that people were asking about it, or
I was saying, yet. The police aren't using them yet. In a case like this, yes, the psychics are coming out of the woodworks because they always do, right. But the police aren't using them because it's still early. If she's not found in the next 6 or 8 months, we might see a psychic hired by the police. Right? And definitely if she's not found in 5 years, there'll be psychics be like, we can help you.
Right.
And somebody will be like,
contacting the police. Right?
Okay. Oh yeah. It's almost always like psychics contacting the police.
Right.
Even in cases where their police are contacting the psychic, it's because they have a relationship with that psychic who reached out to them in the first place. Very rarely do they go to the yellow pages. Do you know what yellow pages are?
Oh yeah. I'm aware.
Okay, cool.
We used to live in a house in Bear, Delaware. There are no bears in Delaware, by the way, but that's just what it's called. And we used to get once a year, we used to get yellow pages. Now it didn't have any. I don't think it had any people's name. I think it was just businesses or something, maybe limited people or something. But I thought that was really strange. So this would have been 2014 to 2019. And I'm like, what are you guys still delivering here? Like, why are you still doing this? Is there some kind of data out there that people are still looking through this to find information? Because I don't know that anybody ever does. This doesn't seem worthwhile to me, right? Maybe the advertising is for the businesses, but I don't really know about that. It was strange, even 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, the yellow pages were a book about this thick. I made yellow pages. It had businesses, phone numbers and things in it. People used to look through them to try and find whatever they were looking for, like a plumber. Turn to the plumbing page and find a plumber. Yep. Police aren't usually going to the yellow pages looking for psychics. Psychics are usually reaching out to them.
What I always found interesting was, they had the phone books with the white pages in the front. And back in the 70s, I think up into the 80s, it was this way too, in the early 80s, you have a deal with the phone company for that phone, a house line. So it was a phone that was in your house, not a cell phone.
Right.
It's actually connected by wire.
A landline.
A landline.
At that point, it was owned by the phone company, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
way back,
you had
way
a
back.
service. I don't know if I think some of them came from the phone company. I think you could also buy your own. But yeah, you still had to deal with them, right? Like you paid them. And that gave them the right to put in your phone number in the white pages. It wasn't optional. It had to go in. You had to pay a fee to be unlisted. It was called an unlisted number, which was in the 70s. That was like, they're rich. They have an unlisted number.
Unlisted number.
They paid to not be in the book.
They don't want people to know.
Right.
Yeah, it was a huge thing. Now, of course, you would say, well, that's reversed. Like they shouldn't be charging you money. It's like extortion to not put your information out there.
I did want to go back and clarify one thing. There aren't really usually bears in Delaware, but last year there was. We called it the Delabear.
Yeah.
Right. It was just
that was convenient. Delaware.
Yeah,
right.
it was.
Delaware.
It was a bear, a wild bear from Pennsylvania that had wandered down into the area, and people were just freaking out. Oh my God, there's a bear here! And it wandered around. And funny enough, it actually went to the bear area.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's no town of Bear.
No, it's
It's
unincorporated.
not actually a town. It's not an incorporated thing. There was a train depot that had a post office in it years and years and years ago. It closed down. It's not there anymore. But it was called the Bear train station. And addresses when mail went there was, this place near the Bear train station. And then it just got shortened to near Bear. And then it just got shortened to Bear. But there's no actual Bear town.
Unincorporated, therefore no police department, no mayor or anything like that. It was just an area.
But a lot of people are from Bear.
That's a popular thing in Delaware, unincorporated areas, and probably other places too. But it doesn't have a police force or mayor or anything. It's an area, right? It's a unincorporated, you know what it is kind of thing.
And this is why people tune into the murder part. And the Alien Lizard Humanoids is here to talk about Delaware.
Can I? This is a tangent, okay? But,
Sure.
But I love telling this story because I tell it to everyone imaginable. The times when I have, I'm exaggerating, when I have fought a bear one-handed. Okay, now, but this is true. All right, this is true. So I used to work at a camp for 3 years up in it was summer camp. So it was an overnight camp, but I worked there for 3 consecutive summers up in the Poconos, and they had black bears, right? Because you're in the middle of the Poconos. Now, black bears, certainly they'll get aggressive, but more or less, they just look for food. And if there's some kind of disturbance, people walking by or whatever, unless you're threatening them, they're going to leave, right? They're pretty scared of people. Maybe not scared, but they don't want anything to do with you, generally speaking. So, when we were out at night, just, if we had a day off or if we were working on something after the campers had went to sleep or something, we would occasionally see bears. They'd be rummaging through the trash or whatever, So by my 3rd summer there, I knew that was kind of the case. So I had a laptop in one hand. I was working on something that I had to do for the next day. And so there's this bear. And probably at that point, 15 or 20 feet from me. All right, it's a black bear rummaging through the trash. Now, I was feeling pretty high and mighty at this point, right? So I was like, all right, I know what to do here. So, okay, now one-handed. So this is the truth. I had a laptop in one hand, and it was one-handed. So I picked up a rock, and I threw it at this metal trash can, and the bear ran away. So my version of the story is that I fought the bear one-handed. And it's the truth. Maybe I didn't fight the bear, but I was one-handed, and I did make the bear go away. So as far as I'm concerned, I fought the bear one-handed. And that's the story I'm going to take to the grave. If you disagree with me, you're wrong, because I fought a bear one-handed. End of story.
My grandfather has you beat.
He probably does,
He
but
does.
I'm
Absolutely
gonna
does.
take this one and tell it whoever I can.
I was there for this one. Do you have any bear stories?
I don't know.
Oh, darn. We could have, this tangent could have just been 3 bear stories.
The bear part,
Like,
right?
right? Could have been the bear part. But this one, I'll tell this. This is a story I'll tell every chance I get.
Yeah,
Because
right.
I sat there for this. And I'll try and do a condensed version. But my grandfather had a cabin up in upstate Pennsylvania. And I was up there. I was about 12 years old. It's middle of the night. I got up to go pee. And as I mentioned earlier in this episode, outhouses. Mm-hmm. There was no indoor plumbing in the cabin, so I was going to have to go outside. And I knew how to do that. The porch was screened in, right? And I go over to the front door. I flick the lights on so I can go out to the outhouse, and I kind of look through the blinds that are on there because there's a glass window in the door. And I look through, and there's a bear on the porch, like inside the porch. And I'm like, I don't have to go anymore. I went and I woke up my dad. I said, Dad, there's a bear on the porch. And my dad just goes, you're just having a dream. Go back to sleep. I'm like, no, seriously, bear on the porch. He gets up, walks over, pulls the blinds back, goes, huh, there's a bear on the porch. And he goes into my grandfather's room and goes, Dad, there's a bear on the porch. And I swear this is absolutely what was said. He said, you're just having a dream. Go back to sleep. It's like, no, seriously, there's a bear on the porch.
Seems to be a common theme.
My grandfather gets up, and he's wearing long johns, right? Like, I swear it's the kind of pajamas that have the flap in the rear side.
Stereotypical.
Old West.
Right, the stereotypical Old West long johns. He gets up, storms over to the door, goes, there's no yeet bear on the porch, and just opens the door. And there is the bear staring right up at him. And from somewhere, I don't know where, he pulls out his revolver. My grandfather had guns on him all the time. He had a license to carry. He pulls out his revolver and points it at the bear. And then tilts his head to the side and just puts the gun down on the counter. And I'm like, what? He reaches over onto the wall and grabs a fly swatter. And this is not a fly swatter you pick up at Walmart. This isn't plastic. And like, this was something he made out of an old coat hanger, some masking tape, and the very same screen that had screened in the door. Right? He made his own fly swatter, and he just raises it up over his head like it's holy Excalibur that he just pulled from the stone, and just smacks the bear on the nose and goes, get out of here! And I looked at him like, are you crazy? And my dad looked at him and goes, are you crazy? And the bear looks at him like, are you crazy? And he just, get out of here! And just keeps whacking the bear on the nose and backs this bear out off of the porch. And this is the most cartoon moment of my entire life. It's absolutely true. He reaches out, grabs the handle of the door, and goes, and stay out!
The kind of thing where the door comes off the hinges, like in a cartoon, just like slams.
Right. And then we went back to bed. I did not have to pee after that. I was done.
For days, right?
It was the next morning when I went to pee. That's my most famous bear story.
That's incredible.
I've got a few others, but that's the most fun.
And
stay out. So funny. Unfortunately, Dr. Grande does not have a bear story
I don't
to share.
have. I've had an uneventful life as far as bear attacks.
Well, I think you're doing all right then. Yeah. Apparently, you just need to go to rural Pennsylvania.
Apparently.
That's the place to be.
I do have one bear story now that I think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't involve an actual bear. But
That's all right.
so my wife's not going to like this one. So years ago, I was driving in New Jersey, like going over New Jersey, meeting with clients. And there's a mall over there. I think it's the Hamilton Mall in Mays Landing. I think it's still there. Huge mall. So I'm trying to think of the year. We're going back to like early 90s. So I wasn't married yet, if I remember right. I don't think I was married yet. So I was dating the woman's now my wife. All right. So, at that stage, and I'm sure later, you buy things, right? Like I've, bought different things over the years, but especially in those early times you're dating, like you buy like stuffed animals or a heart with chocolate in it. Not for any necessarily specific reason like Valentine's Day, just
because.
Yeah.
Just because. Show your love.
Yeah. So I went into a store in the Hamilton Mall, and they had this, I still have it, this gigantic bear. Like this stuffed bear. I mean, it's as big as a bear. Like it's as big as this table. Like it's huge.
Life size.
Get a picture of it from the, but it's a massive bear. And, back then I was, I don't know, 19, 20, something like that. It's not cool to walk with this huge bear through a mall. Like that's not what tough guys do, right? But I'm like, well, she would really like this bear. So I'm like to the cashier, I'm like, can you put like a bag or something over its head? Like just try to make this not look like a huge bear. And of course, I'm walking through the mall and it's obvious that this, it's like this. So I put it in my pickup truck and I drive back and I'm like really excited. I'm like, I braved the humiliation of the bear carry through the mall. And I show it to my wife and she's like, I don't like that. She's never, ever liked that bear.
So where does it live? Where does this bear live now?
So I
Does it still have
I
it?
hid the bear in the basement, not in just over on the other side, the unfinished side, for years. And then we were cleaning out about maybe 2 years ago. And I'm like, what do you want me to do with this bear? And she said, I just throw it away. So I put it in the shed.
You just start putting it in different places in the house, like just randomly.
In the shower or something, or yeah,
It's,
the bear lives on.
yeah, I mean, just, to be fair, she's liked every other gift. It was just the one. Didn't like the bear.
To be bear.
Yeah, to be bear.
Nice.
To be bear.
Nice.
Yeah. I've received gifts too that, it's just some you like, some you don't.
Yeah.
Just bear with us, folks.
Good one.
We'll get through this part. It's been kind of grisly. But if you're still with us.
It might seem like we're barely getting into it, but we're almost done. All right, so we are almost done. We have just 2 more theories we'll look at before wrapping up Summer Wells. So we talked about the walk-off theory, right? We've talked about the something might have happened. Then we have the random abduction, another favorite of people on social media, where this is a non-targeted. We'll get to the target as the last theory, but just a guy wandering by, maybe hunting in the woods. I don't know what else you'd be doing out there, enjoying the scenery. Sees her and decides, I'm going to become a felon. Or maybe they already were a felon, so I have 2 strikes left.
I can get away with this. I won't go to jail for life for this one because this is only my 2nd strike.
He looks down at his watch or his phone. Oh, it's Tuesday. It's time to become a felon.
It was on my schedule of things to do today.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so this one seems, for many reasons we've discussed, very, very unlikely.
Right.
Yeah. And that brings us to the last one, which is the one that Don Wells, I think, endorses. Someone targeted her. Someone knew she'd be there and purposely came to the property and took her. That's the last theory.
And where some of the social media theories come in with this one is that somebody saw her at the swimming hole and then kind of followed them back.
Yeah. Which, okay. That's possible.
Yeah. It wasn't that person just randomly thinking I'll become a felon, but it was like wow, that girl
would be good to traffic or sell or whatever his or her evil intent was. Could be.
Now, one of the things that there were pictures, and I don't know how they got them, but pictures that I saw that people reported were from the house, were from the day that the police were investigating, the day of the disappearance, or possibly even the next day. But no, I guess it would have been that same day. But there were reportedly there were people working on either power lines or lights in the area. Something, there was bucket trucks, right? So maybe the power company. Now I saw the picture, but Candus would also say that there were people there working on utilities of some sort that same day. Now I'd like to assume, of course, that the police investigated that, looked into that, and maybe that's part of something they're looking into. I don't know. But there were already people there that aren't usually there. They don't know. So, okay, so that's a possibility. Maybe not random, but maybe again, they saw them coming and going. Maybe somebody has some kind of nefarious purpose that they do outside of whatever else they do, or selling people or something. Who knows? Some other people have elaborated on the intentional abduction, and that perhaps somebody was waiting in the house and now they had the basement, which they had the walkout from on the hill that we talked about, but in the house, you look at pictures of this house or video, the steps going down to this basement were pretty strange, right? So I think this was the part of the house that Don had added on. The steps were pretty strange. It wasn't just like, hey, here's a nice handrail going down to these steps. It was narrow, and you had to. They had built this more or less a table over top of these steps. So you had to kind of look around and see underneath of this to see the steps. So you had to duck down. Don was 6 feet or taller. And for him to go down to this, I mean, probably pretty annoying for him, being a taller guy. Maybe pretty annoying for anybody. But you had to duck down and go underneath these steps.
I don't want to put anything on Don, but He might have been drunk when he was building that.
That's quite possible. Or maybe they just needed a kitchen table, and that was like, all right, I guess we'll put it over the steps. Why not?
So, you know what would be great right now? A combination kitchen table, stairs to the basement. It's a great idea.
I'm going to patent this, sell it to everyone, put it in design plans. So, yeah, maybe somebody was waiting down there for them. Whoever, the kid, the adult, maybe there was somebody who was mad at the family, didn't like them. Who knows? But that could be a possibility as well. Rather than someone just walking in off the street, maybe someone just was in there, perhaps even someone who was on some kind of drugs.
It would have been difficult for them to walk in off the street, as there were no streets in the area.
Well, they had to, walk up this steep hill into their yard. But either way, so that was kind of an elaboration on it was my concept of someone, just kind of randomly walks into the house or walks in there just at the right time. But if they were waiting there, I guess that could be the family was gone all day, or at least Candus and Summer were. So maybe nobody was in the basement for a while, potentially.
That's a possibility. They're lying in wait.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also possible that it kind of was an intentional attempted burglary.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That Summer just happened to, walk in on, they're in the basement trying to find something to steal, and then Summer's there. It's like, oh crap,
gotta do something about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it wasn't even to take her for the traditional reasons you might think, but just to get rid of her as a witness, something like that.
Anything is possible because we just don't have the evidence.
Yes, that brings us to kind of wrapping up. We'll go through each talk about these theories and any other theories about what do we think happened. Again, just speculation, have no idea. Would really love if this case would be solved, actually. But
really love to find Summer. Really,
mm-hmm, yeah, absolutely, yeah. All right, so we'll start with you, Jeff. What are your thoughts on these theories?
It's tough to pick any path here, right? To say with any sort of conviction, I think this is what happened. I think it'd probably be easier to rule things out. So the parents doing something to her, being involved in actually hurting her or taking her away or something, I don't think that's really possible. Dr. Grande, you had said that they don't seem to be the criminal mastermind type. Don both of them have a criminal history. So actually, I think you said this, Dr. Grande, in your video. Don seems to be better at getting caught than he does at anything else, and they just don't seem to have the. They don't really have the skill. Seem to have the skill to do something like that. If there was an accident, parents are trying to cover it up. Doesn't really seem to be any indications of that either, because their stories have remained consistent. It doesn't seem to be any visual thing that maybe that has happened, and there's no evidence of it. And I think evidence would be pretty plentiful in a situation like that, whether blood or some kind of evidence of where the kid might have gone, DNA, who knows, something, anything. Some are wandering off. I guess it's possible, but with the breadth of that search that they did, I just don't know that that's very likely, right? Because I just don't know that she could have really gotten many places at her age. It's possible, of course, but I don't think so. So I'm gonna say that I think the best, the most odds here are that it was an intentional thing, that somebody, whether they were already in the house doing something, trying to rob the house or something, but that maybe somebody was already there or followed them from that swimming hole, or knew the family already and had kind of been planning this. It was in the works. Perhaps if there were people working nearby, they started to get this idea of this looks like an easy target. So I'm going to go with an intentional abduction.
Very good. Very good. Any other final thoughts about the case?
The only thing I wanted to add, because I think this is important, is this is obviously still an ongoing case, right? We don't have answers. We talked about that. So anybody, and the active Amber Alert as well for Summer, because she's missing. You can find this real easily. Just type in Summer Wells in a search, and it comes up with the county sheriff's office number or the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And so the number, it's 800 TBI find, or 423-272-7121. So my point is here is that it's an easy find. If you have information about this or credible tips or you think might be credible, you can find a way to report that. There's also, I just see findsummerwells.com. So that's something we don't always see, we don't always see active investigations, ones where people can actually still make reports about these missing people, especially because it's so recent. So I think it's important for people to note that.
Absolutely. All right. Mike, your thoughts?
I kind of mine differ from Jeff's on this one. When it comes to intentional abduction, it's possible, I think, but I just don't see much evidence of it. Of course, in a lot and home like this where there's just so much debris and detritus, just saved stuff sitting around, it might be very difficult to pick out, for police investigators, pick out what's evidence and what's just sitting there.
That's a good point.
As far as an unintentional abduction, I think that's highly unlikely. Like an unplanned, not unintentional, but an unplanned abduction. Right. I just don't think that one's as likely. Much like many people speculate about JonBenet Ramsey, like her brother having had something to do with it, accidentally killing her. It is possible that one of her brothers did something that resulted in her death. But again, I think we would have seen evidence, and right, Don and Candus don't seem to be the criminal genius types that would be able to cover this up and get away with it. And their kids probably wouldn't be better at it than they are. Although that is the goal, right? To have our children be better than we are. To me, it's just the most likely thing to me is that she kind of wandered away. And I know that they did searches and things, but I repeatedly see cases where somebody goes missing in wilderness like that, and searchers pass by within 100 feet of where the body actually is laying, and never see it, especially in the spring and summertime when there's a huge amount of undergrowth. Like there's lots of low-lying plants and a lot of foliage that just can block view and block vision. And if she was attacked by an animal and dragged off underneath one of these things and consumed or partially consumed, she might not be, the remains might not be seen by searchers who are within 10 feet of it. Human beings are pretty good at searching through things and quantifying things, but we're not perfect. And when there's so many problems with communication on the search and rescue issues, coordinating things, it makes it so much harder to say for definitively that we've actually searched this entire area and there's no trace. At this point, they haven't found anything. But to me, that's the most likely thing, is that she wandered off, may have been attacked by an animal, driven off. She got lost. And because she hasn't been found at this point, it's unlikely that she's still alive if that's what happened, as I said earlier.
Any other final thoughts?
Yeah, my last final thought on this one is interesting, that it's interesting that we focus so much on Summer Wells. Like there's so much of a media focus on this particular case. Because there are other cases that are similar in nature that aren't getting quite as much media attention. Like in Idaho, there was a 5-year-old boy named Michael Joseph Vaughn, who went missing on the 27th of July. He is still missing. Police have no leads. Similar thing. But I think that is a much more interesting case just because Michael's nickname is Monkey. We could have been sitting here the entire time talking about Monkey Vaughn. Right? I think that would have been a little bit more entertaining. Not that I want to make light of any child going missing, but it does speak to differences in demographics of what is being seized on. Why is Summer Wells so much more interesting than any other missing 5-year-old child?
Yeah, and unfortunately, there are quite a few at any time.
Yeah, it is very, very unfortunate. And I just wanted to point out, like, that's all. I just did a quick search, like missing 5-year-old children, summer 2021, and unfortunately, they're far, far too many. But we're focusing on summer, and I think maybe it's the mystery.
I think it's the mystery, and maybe in this case, the plentiful interviews from people that are culturally different than a lot of people watching.
Yeah, I think that very much might be it. Is the I don't know much about Fruitland, Idaho, which is where Monkey went missing, but yeah, the Wells and Bly are giving a lot of different information. They're actively speaking out. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes it ends up being bad. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the thing I talked about before is the parallel to Madeline McCann. Of course, both her parents were physicians, and I think sometimes, they, in my opinion, they did something wrong, right? They left Madeline alone in an apartment in a foreign country to go eat. They weren't far away, but they couldn't see the apartment, and they gave interviews, right? Many interviews over many years. I think they still do from time to time. And I think that, seeing how they've been torn apart terribly by such a wide variety of people tracking the case, like really torn apart. Mm-hmm. I see kind of the same dynamic occurring with Candus and Don. Like, people like to hate them, right? The people they love to hate, as they say, right? And, in the McCann case, of course, I think it's pretty much solved. I think it was probably this guy from Germany who, it turns out, was actually there and did some suspicious things there, and including getting rid of a car right after this appearance, things like that. And yet people still go online and say, no, the McCanns did it. They're horrible people. Again, they made a mistake for certain, a terrible mistake. The McCanns did. And I think maybe what they're doing here is they're seeing maybe the same thing with Don and Candus, like the drinking, the criminality. Oh, you horrible people. Yeah. You remind me of the McCanns. It's new Madeline McCann case. And, of course, they're pretty similar. Like the victims, pretty similar. I guess alleged. We don't really know what happened, but I assume they're victims at this point. Like, things didn't work out for either one.
Pretty sure McCann was a victim.
Yeah, well, the police still have not definitively. I mean, clearly something happened. She didn't walk off, like is possible in this case. But they've said that, pretty much said she's not alive. So we know Madeline McCann was, in fact, a victim. And I'm pretty sure that Summer Wells is too, even if it was just a wander off. And
victim of the elements.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Or wildlife.
So I would order this case a little differently, probably more like Jeff, where I view this as an assailant or cover-up pretty much in equal measure. Because I agree they could certainly, well, the random kidnapping, we can agree that probably didn't happen. But, the wandering,
not likely.
The wandering theory is good. But I think that, people live out there, they volunteer for the search. I think they're pretty much going to spot most everything out there, especially in the first 500-600 feet of that property, where it's likely whatever happened to her would have happened to her, like attacked by an animal. Or I also think that she would have started screaming if something had happened. So, or even if she got lost and turned around, she would have yelled. Now, maybe some people were incapacitated, as you've talked about. So that's kind of like why I can't dismiss it altogether. And all the theories are possible. Mm-hmm. At this point, we don't know. But yeah, I could picture maybe she's out there yelling and no one's attentive. And then to survive, she continues walking, but gets mixed up. Maybe an old well, mine shaft, crevice. I mean, if that's the case, though, at some point, she should be found, theoretically, could be found.
She could be. Unfortunately, I think it would be remains being found. Right.
Well, not alive, unfortunately. Yeah, so I still think assailant and cover up, but I don't like any theory.
Right.
That's kind of where I stay with this case. Nothing really says, hey, it's me. Because you can always find a counter. Mm-hmm. And their lack of sophistication, even though my number one theory is assailant, I mean, it's again tied with cover-up. Their lack of sophistication, just, I don't know how they could give that many interviews and not slip. Although they have both referred to her in the past tense, I don't think that matters. I mean, if they're thinking she's dead, then that's why they do that.
If they've come to that conclusion within the first, 5 or 6 days, then any past tense, they would have moved into the grieving process at that point.
Yeah.
She hasn't been found. It's been a week. There's no way she's still alive. You have your breakdowns in private, and then you move into the past tense language.
Yeah. So my final thought in this case is just I think how terrifying it is to think that a 5-year-old girl can go missing out of a basement anywhere, city, suburbs, rural, wherever. Just the fact that that can really happen,
Right.
and leave really no evidence at all. Just a thief in the night.
Especially if it is truly a 5-minute window from the time she was last seen to when Candus came back to check on her. And the boys didn't hear anything, don't know anything, didn't see anything. As far as we know, I don't know that they've said anything, or I'm sure they've been interviewed, but nothing really makes sense.
When they get older, they'll be on Phil McGraw if the show's still around.
Let's hope not.
The lies of Summer Wells.
Right.
of the case. It's amazing how people in the future tend to remember a lot when they go on those shows. Like, it makes me suspicious when people do that. Like was it Burke?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if he actually remembered too much, but it's like, why didn't you say something? Not that he said anything, but just that kind of case. Like, why didn't you say something when it was going on?
Yeah. Right.
Because nobody was paying me then.
Because I wasn't going to be famous at that point.
So that's where we'll wrap up this case. Frightening mystery. Again, a case that's captured the imagination and interest of a lot of people. It'd be great to get a resolution. Who knows? If there is, or really any substantive change, we'll update this case for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Bring this one back.
Hopefully it was some kind of celebration that she's been found alive as well.
Absolutely.
I think that's everybody's hope, of course.
Absolutely. So we will wrap up there. Please put any thoughts you have in the comments, maybe on our theories or our bear stories, whatever comments.
or the dog barking.
Or the dog barking, whatever. She's probably chasing a bear away. It's no big
Don't worry
deal.
about it.
Yeah. More likely a bunny, but no bunnies were harmed in production, and no bears either. But yeah, please put any comments, thoughts in the comment section. We read every comment and appreciate them. We will be back soon with the murder part, and we'll talk to you then.